We have.
Yeah.
He's
Good evening. I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Berkeley City Planning Commission, Tuesday, October 24th, 2017. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Baumgartner, could you please call the roll?
Barnett.
Present.
Tangari.
Present.
M. Smith.
Here.
Note D. Smith's absence. Shadle.
Here.
Richardson.
Here.
Murad.
Here.
Kapelansky.
Here.
And Buckler.
Present.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. So, we have the agenda in front of us. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Baumgartner, would you like to call?
I will.
Excuse me, Ms. Chairman.
Yes. Mr.
Item
Smith.
3, could you clarify item 3, please?
Following the work session on the 16th, there was some conversation about wanting to discuss further the architecture on the project, that being outside of the, mostly outside of the scope of the pre-application conference itself. I placed the agenda item as a perhaps. If the item were to proceed past agenda item 2, then it opens up to a wide range of discussion items so that commissioners can question the applicant further.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we can call for a roll call on that.
All right. Jane Gary?
Yes.
M. Smith?
Yes.
Shadle?
Yes.
Richardson?
yes.
Murad?
Yes.
Kapelansky?
Yes.
Barnett?
Yes.
And Buckler.
Yes.
Okay. Agenda passes.
Okay, so the minutes were provided from the September 26th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I have a correction to the minutes.
Okay, we'll have
Motion.
discussion.
Sure.
Motion to approve.
And seconded?
support it.
Okay, discussion.
Correction to the minutes is that Commissioners Kapelansky and Tangari are credited with voting to approve the minutes. Both were absent from the meeting and should not be in that
Okay,
item.
awesome. Good catch.
Okay. I'll update it.
Any other comments or observations?
Nope.
All right. Call the roll, please.
M. Smith?
Yes.
Shadle?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes.
Murad?
Yes.
Kapelansky?
Yes.
Barnett?
Yes.
Tangari?
Yes.
And Buckler.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, communications. I see we have one.
There's one additional item, a piece of correspondence that came to the commission from a resident that came after the packets went out, so it was provided at your spot.
Okay.
I believe
thank you.
each of you were CC'd on the email as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you very much for that. All right, so now is an opportunity for citizen comments. Citizens may approach the microphone and provide comments on any item that is not on the agenda this evening. We will have opportunity to have those, discuss those items as they arise. Please state your name and your city of residence.
Brandon Alger, I live in Berkeley, and I just wanted to make a remark about an article I read in Cranes today about a development in Ferndale and Pleasant Ridge that I thought was really impressive. It's about halfway between downtown Ferndale and downtown Royal Oak, outside of any regular commercial corridors at 10 Mile and Bermuda Street. And this is probably outside of the scope of anything that we specifically do regularly, but I wanted to kind of comment that I would hope that what we do sets a precedent, both as a commission and as residents as well, that we could set a precedent for the city of Berkeley being inviting to that type of development should that opportunity ever come up in our neck of the woods. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Please, the microphone, please.
It's a 13-acre redevelopment of a brownfield site that straddles the border between Pleasant Ridge and Ferndale, and it'll be developed as mixed use with office space, a brew pub, apartments, and a neighborhood market space as well. So really kind of a varied development, but very exciting opportunity, really exciting for the residents near 10 Mile and Bermuda and in Ferndale and Pleasant Ridge.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anyone else approaching the microphone, so we'll move on from citizens' comments. So the first order of business, number 1, site plan review, SP 1017, Kamal Sharak, 34, I hope I pronounced that correctly, 3427 West 12 Mile Road, south side of 12 Mile Road, between Royal Avenue and Buckingham Avenue, is requesting site plan approval for an accessory structure in the 12 Mile District. Are you, Mr.
Madam
Sharak?
Chair, before we proceed, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm well acquainted with the owner of the Berkley Marathon, and I have discussed his idea for constructing a storage facility on his property. I have provided him with some general advice about our zoning ordinance and some advice about where to go to file his application and so on. We also discussed setback requirements. I advised him that that would depend on whether the portion of the property that he wanted to put his his building on, accessory building on, would be considered as fronting on Buckingham or fronting on 12 Mile. I told him I did not know the answer to that question, and I directed him to consult with the planning department about that. I have not seen the plans until they're provided to us. I have not discussed anything other than the general location and the general purpose of this building, this accessory building, with him. Certainly have had no discussion about its dimension, its height, what siding it would use, anything like that. I don't think that I am biased in this matter, but I needed to bring it to your attention, and certainly I would defer to the judgment of the Planning Commission as to whether I should sit in on this decision.
Okay, so let's have a little internal discussion on that. Does anybody offer an opinion on that?
Generally speaking, I would look for a financial interest, for
here.
conflict of interest. Do you have any
Mr. Singh, were
financial
you
interest in the
compensated?
outcome?
I was not compensated for that in any way.
Well,
I was trying to be helpful, but it was
Yes.
in a general sense, not,
understood, and I
Yeah.
think that, you know, as residents of Berkeley, we all have interactions with people throughout the community, and as long as there was no financial interest and you didn't give him the winning strategy for beating the planning commission, not sure there is.
I wish I knew what that was.
I
I don't
bet
have
you
a
some people
problem.
in the audience do too. So, yeah, I don't have a problem. Does anybody else?
I don't have a
Okay.
problem.
I don't have an objection. All right, so we'll move forward.
Thanks.
So are you,
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin. I'm Kamal's son.
okay?
We've been working hand in hand for 14 years together.
Sure.
And we just are really here today to figure out whether this is something we're able to do or not. You know, it's just going to open up an opportunity for us to have a little bit of storage. We do have 2,380 square foot of building, but an additional 600 square foot of storage would be nice.
Okay. So, Mr. Brown.
What are you going to use the building for specifically?
So we're going to just store pop cans. If we were going to buy a pallet of water, we would put that in there. if we were gonna receive a big delivery, we would put it in the accessory building until we were actually able to put it away.
Are you concerned about freezing in the winter?
No, because things that would freeze would not go in there in the winter.
All right. I do have one problem. I looked at the site. I was out to the site on Sunday and looked at it. And what I don't see on your drawing right here, there's electrical power lines going east and west.
That is correct.
And I don't see the easement for those lines on your drawings, and I don't know how it affects where the placement of the building is at this point. And those if there is an easement, it has to be an easement. I couldn't support it at this point, knowing that I don't know where that easement lies in relation to the building that's shown on the drawing. Otherwise, that's pretty cut and dry, I think.
That's something the architect would have to help us figure out, and
Yes.
we would have to make sure that it is safe.
Well, you can't build within the easement, that's the issue.
That's true.
And we are also trying to not interfere with our water retention pond on the left.
I
It's
think
on the
they-
east side.
Yeah, I think they just asked for you to put a restricted cover in the thing.
So we
That's
just,
my biggest issue, but at this point, I could not approve it tonight, not knowing where that easement falls in relation to where you're planning to build.
okay.
That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any other comments from the commissioners? Mr. Tangeri?
Sure. Three questions that have not been raised yet. Is it intended to be permanent, something that you're going to put there and keep there for the foreseeable future?
Yes.
Okay. I was having a little trouble telling which materials on the exterior would go where, based on the materials provided. It says siding, brick siding on this sheet that was submitted, but I couldn't tell what was brick and what was siding and
So you would have brick on the front,
on the front.
siding on the sides, and in the back.
Okay. Okay, so brick on the front and siding elsewhere. Okay. And my other, this is more of a comment than a question. From what I can tell, based on the way the 12-mile frontage was platted, this is close to the rear lot line, and would therefore require a 5-foot setback, and I'm seeing a 3-foot setback on the drawing. So, absent a variance, the shed couldn't be put exactly where it is on the drawing. I could be wrong about the plat, but from what I understand, 12-mile frontage has 12 mile as its front lot line, which would make the lot line opposite the rear lot line, the way it's defined in the ordinance, so.
If I may, there are, and I don't know if this answers the question, by the way, but there are, on the plat, I believe there are 2 lots.
Okay.
And one of them is on 12 Mile, and then the other where this building is to be located is another platted lot.
Sure.
And in the discussion I referred to a few minutes ago, I advised that I was not sure what would be considered front and what would be considered
Right.
side as to that additional platted lot. Probably originally, it was fronting on Buckingham.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, I'm not in a position to make that decision all by myself, obviously.
Right.
The hinge on the-
And then I guess there's the matter of what would the subsequent lot combination mean for,
We get into the
With respect
zoning,
to
how
what?
is it zoned?
well, it's zone 12-mile district.
It's all zoned.
Is it
Yeah.
all zoned
Yeah,
commercial?
it's a single parcel.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a single parcel now, yes.
So then it would be the
So that plat goes away.
So then, so if it's a single parcel now, then its frontage would be on 12 mile.
It'll be on 12-mile, yeah.
So that would be, so it would create a variance then on the 3-foot,
Right.
so.
So that 5-foot setback applies there is what I'm saying. That was it for me.
Any other comments? Ms. Kavalansky?
Just a few quick questions. How tall is this going to be? I saw it said 9 feet for the interior, but what's to the midpoint of the roof?
That I can't answer. I'm not sure.
Will it be less than 15 feet tall?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then just a general question for Mr. Baumgarten. Why, has the city historically sent accessory structure approval to the planning commission?
The alteration, since it's a commercial lot, you're altering the site plan for the commercial lot, then yes, that's why it appears before this body.
Okay, my 2 cents would be that we consider having all accessory structures approved administratively. I don't know how the rest of the planning commission feels, but that's my 2 cents.
I frankly like that idea.
I like that idea.
Yeah, I would think that if you set a concrete square footage threshold, that we
Right.
could do that.
Less
Yeah.
than, yeah.
I mean, certainly if it didn't require a building permit or something would be one potential threshold, but if you wanted to set one higher than that, that would be something I would consider too if I thought it was reasonable.
That was all I had.
How would we go about making that recommendation?
There would be an ordinance
Ordinance
amendment.
change.
An ordinance
Be
change.
update to the zoning code.
Well, that's something else for you to do, Mr. Baumgarten.
My pleasure.
Might be something for when we have a planner,
Right, just add it to the list, it's not
Yeah.
immediate.
but it's a good point.
I see what you mean. One thing was not reflected in the staff report, but was also not indicated on there is that the zoning code mandates that all structures need to have at least a minimum distance of 15 feet from one another. Do you know if that was calculated on these plans? It's not shown as such. There's a residential building that really has a short,
think it's
what would be
only
for them
5
a
feet.
side yard setback. So the distance between the two buildings appears to be less than 15 feet, but it's not noted on the plans.
That I can't answer. I'm not sure if that was taken into consideration or not.
So I have a question. So I can't really tell from the layout, is it going in the existing concrete area, or are you going to extend the concrete into the are you going to extend this into the grassy area
So we would have to pour a slab there.
on into
I-
the grass?
yes.
Okay. And footings and everything, rat wall?
And, Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
I think that house is 5 feet from the property line.
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
Pretty close. So then you'd have to be 15 feet from that
15
house,
feet from
probably
the
10
house.
feet from
10
your
feet.
property line, which then starts shifting it into north into your parking area. So
Right.
that, and again, also Commissioner Barnett's comments about the easement,
Mhm.
that's a concern too.
So, go ahead, Mr. Smith.
There's a lot of questions and information that's not accounted for on this drawing. And these drawings aren't sealed by a registered engineer architect, so that's something you need to do.
Of course.
Resolve these issues, get someone on the project that can seal, registered engineer or architect that will seal the drawing for us, so we can be assured that these things were taken into account. Also, I'd like to know what this thing looks like. You know, it's a 600-foot, it's a 3-car garage. It's a big building. And I do see something in the back that, on page 19 of 20, that says roof trusses must be 412 pitch. Well, I don't know. That's up to them to decide. But I'd like to see something a little more definitive of what this looks like, because it is a big structure. And I'm a little concerned if it gets shoved forward, northward, as it needs to be. All of a sudden, they're losing some of the parking spaces that we required them to
Right.
provide 10, 12 years ago, whenever. I don't recall when we approved the
That was 2007.
10 years ago. How about that? I just guessed. So I'd like to see a little more detail. This obviously, these are valid concerns on the site plan. I'd like to see a little more than a materials list on the description of the building. And I also agree that the south side is probably the rear of the property being combined. Because the gas station building is at 10.15. We made that the rear setback.
Right.
Back 10 years ago, for those of us who were here. So, so I agree, that would follow. Plus with the easement and the distance from the building, it looks like they're gonna need to be 10 feet anyway.
Right.
Right.
But that brings in other things into play, like I said, the parking. So I think you need to do a little more work on this and come back to us.
All right, well, now you know, the reason why I came here today is I wanted to make sure that it's a possibility that we can move forward. And I don't, you know, I didn't want to, my architect is ready to go. But I wanted to know, is this an actual possibility? Can this actually happen?
I have one more.
Go ahead.
Are you going to give them are we going to provide them with a list of what we're asking for, Mr. Baumgarten?
Yes.
We'll
yes.
give them a list of things. Let me ask the planning commission this one thing. Since this is a commercial structure, do you want siding on the south side, or do you want the brick to continue around the whole thing?
In my opinion, Mr. Chairman, there's a pretty tall wall separating the residence between the gas station.
That's right.
Yep.
And then the residence is a pretty tall wall on top of that masonry or concrete wall, whatever it is. And it's about a quarter mile of vinyl siding.
Yeah.
So I don't know if aesthetics on the rear is a big issue. That's my opinion.
I'm just asking.
No, I understand.
My general opinion on that would be that, were this a residential lot facing to the side, either where the rear lot abuts the side yard, it could put a garage back there that had vinyl siding on the back of it, so it's not real substantially different from another situation that you might encounter,
Yeah.
you know, in a neighborhood.
Just happens to be commercial instead of
Commercial.
residential.
Exactly. It is, like you said, a garage, so.
Sure, I had.
And they are using, what is the siding? Is it a,
So I was thinking fiber cement
I
siding
think that's what it says it is
I
here.
assumed that's what it
and
said.
Foxstone on the front to match our current building.
The brick is to match the current brick?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
Fiber cement will be quite a bit higher quality than
Right.
vinyl,
right,
so.
and vinyl,
Right.
so.
We don't plan on leaving Berkeley, so we want our structures to be good.
Sure.
Yeah, I'd be a little hesitant on vinyl, but with the fiber cement, I'm fine with it.
It looks like it's fiber cement. So-
You can either do a postponement.
That part of your plan seems acceptable to me. I think our issues have to do more with the location, the exact location of the building's footprint, and you heard the concern about the easement, that's a,
Easement and setbacks and.
And, Mr. Baumgarten, add to that, verify the height of the building, the midpoint of the roof, since we're here. So,
Sure. Yeah.
please.
And my final thought on it would be that if keeping it 10 feet off the property line moves a portion of the building into the easement, then you would be looking at a variance if you wanted to build a structure.
Right.
So just from a process standpoint, that's something to think about.
So I suggest we have a postponement of this,
Yes.
Yes.
and so can we get a motion?
I'll make that motion. Motion to postpone case SP 1017 pending resubmittal with additional information and as provided in the notes of our recording secretary, and I'm not going to say them all.
that's good.
And
That's good enough.
I think
yeah,
that's good.
and revisions as requested.
Second? Second. All right. Mr. Baumgarten, please.
Motion to postpone. Barnett,
Yes.
Murad,
Yes.
Kapelansky,
Yes.
Tangary,
Yes.
M. Smith,
Yes.
Shadle,
Yes.
Richardson,
yes.
and Buckler.
Yes,
Okay, motion to postpone passes.
thank you. We'll see you in
We'll see you in a little
future.
while.
See you in a
That's
bit.
right.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody, and everybody have a good night.
Thank you.
Me too.
Okay, the next item on the agenda, number 2, pre-application conference, Berkley Coolidge LLC, regarding the southwest corner of Oxford and Coolidge, parcel ID 2518-431-015 through 2518-431-016. 43117 and a portion of 2518 431-22 is seeking input and consideration of an apartment and townhouse development as a planned unit development in accordance with Section 138534 of the Berkeley City Code. Are the petitioners here? Yes, they are. All righty. So,
We're back,
you're back.
Madam Chair,
Tell us what you
members of
got.
this Planning Commission. After taking steps backwards to reassess our plan, we feel that our input, your input the last time, it resulted in a very productive meeting 2 weeks ago at our study session. And from that session, we attempted to incorporate each suggestion that was made to us, and wherever practical, have utilized those ideas. First, we'd like to review with you the recognizable community benefits for pre-application of the PUD. The following are the benefits we believe our project will achieve for the city of Berkeley, its residents of the community and neighboring areas, and in an order of those of the ordinance related to the pre-application qualification, we believe by that order, number one, a high-quality architectural design beyond the site plan requirements of this title. In answer to that, our team has spent considerable time and resources to present a mixed-use residential development utilizing design and materials that will stand the test of time. And we expect that once completed, the project, to be named the Berkley, will set a new precedence of quality for others to emulate in the future. Number two, extensive landscaping beyond the site plan requirements of this title. This development will create a greater amount of landscaping, green space, and open area than required by this title. From a Coolidge Highway view heading westerly, I wonder if we could dim just a little bit of lights, if that's possible, please? Thank you. From the Coolidge Highway view of heading westerly, the building will contain new plantings of trees and shrubbery along the curved driveway, the building frontage, public park, and also upon the roof of the building itself, we use a sedum. The northern boundaries along Oxford Road will be lined with townhouses, each having varying trees and shrubbery, all in addition to the existing trees along the streetscape itself. The western property lines we plan with mature spruce trees, and further along the north, virtually the western portion and the northern boundaries of that western portion, there will be short and tall plantings to minimize any vehicle lighting or other penetrations. Additionally, there will be masonry or other walls constructed to enhance the view. Throughout the parking lot, we will have plantings mixed into the parking islands. Also, the courtyard of the building will contain a mixture of plantings, seating areas, or other elements to create a scenic entry point and create a more viable atmosphere for the entry. Number four is the provisions of open space or public plazas. Proposed site and building plans will offer a greater amount of open space and public plaza. Along the Coolidge Highway frontage, there will be a public plaza that will incorporate features such as permanent benches and tables, potentially for board games, trees, green and other flowering plantings, a public bus stop, public art space, and adjacent flagpole commemorating the service of our veterans. Number five, efficient consolidation of poorly dimensioned parcels. The Our Lady of La Salette Church parcel, which includes the underutilized church western parking lots, combined with the former Our Lady of La Salette school property, is linked by a meandering driveway separating the properties, which causes both parcels to be symbiotic and poorly dimensioned. Our project allows for the poorly dimensioned parcels to be utilized much more efficiently. Number six, the shared vehicular access between properties or users. The existing Our Lady of La Salette Church and the proposed multiple housing campus will share parking and driveways, resulting in less curb cuts, eliminating one left turn lane westbound onto Oxford, no left turn northbound onto Coolidge, and from the main entrance, and by adding no new driveways or ingress or egress access points to residential streets. The shared plan parking will be sufficient in demand and all self-contained within the campus. This plan intends to reduce any further demand on residential streets and commercial roads while encouraging the majority of the traffic from the apartments to flow onto Harvard to utilize the existing traffic signal. Number 7, a complementary mix of uses or a variety of housing types. The proposed new apartment building construction will offer design features with numerous common areas for engagement of the apartment's residents, offering a diverse selection of rental units containing a mix of studio apartments, being also 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 1 bedroom, 1 den, 1 bath, 2 bedroom, 2 bath, 2 bedroom, 2 bath, and a den, each offering creative floors and space plans with extraordinary common areas, shared amenities, each designed to appeal to a wider variety of tenant tastes and comforts. For the townhouses, will provide units that will be for sale, will be also be more attractive to young couples or others desiring to live in a more secluded setting while enjoying the preferred open floor plan and private decks and front yard seating areas. There was a suggestion to try to clarify any kind of a definition of seniors, as we've talked about our mix of the potential resident base that we'll have. Again, just to repeat that, we expect to have about 1/3 of our base to be from Beaumont Hospital, 1/3 of our base to be people of senior ages, and about 1/3 of our base to be millennials. So to clarify that and creating a distinction in which we're referring to the potential senior residents, to define that active seniors, which are typically 55 and above, are still engaged in actions that are not necessarily sedentary. Seniors, primarily being part of the baby boomer era, post-World War II, that want to live independently but do not require assistance to tend or fend for themselves. And seniors requiring assisted living, primarily older than those of the baby boomer era, with challenging health concerns or other situations that need help in feeding, dressing, grooming, reassurance of taking prescribed medications or other ongoing assistance. We do not intend to appeal to that segment and will not try to service that. We don't want to confuse anybody with those thoughts or definitions. From this, we'd like to move on to the architectural aspects, which was the primary discussion last 2 weeks ago at the work study session. And if we could just kind of go through an order of which we'd like to address these, and we'll get into some greater details as we walk through the plans with you. Number 1, the Planning Commission, the community suggests that we break up the facade into different materials and textures. So we have followed that advice and are using both brick and synthetic plaster. Both are masonry materials. Number 2, we have taken the solid length of the walls and broken them up into parts of the building, ensuring a more textured approach in the building for the building itself. Number 3, we're maintaining the green sedum roof to help mitigate potential harmful storm runoff. Number 4, we have proposed a wide variety of units and sizes to appeal to a broader spectrum of residents. Number 5, we have provided covered parking for a great number of our residents, as well as project and the community assets only found in some of the finest of multiple family projects in this area, or frankly anywhere. The placement upon Coolidge has mitigated the potential impact upon the adjacent communities, and also the townhouse condominiums eclipse the view of the parking lot in the rear. Number 7, the design itself is a timeless design emulating a classic theme. Number 8, the podium structure allows for a more transparent view and lighter feel at the street level. For all those reasons, we believe that will be an asset to the community and the city of Berkeley for many, many decades to come.
Okay. So I'd like to start tonight with the Planning Commission questions. Who would like to go first?
Mr.
And Gary.
So at this point, are we really looking at these 7 deals? And we're
Yes.
not getting into the minutia?
We are not
right?
getting into the
Okay.
minutia. We are looking to see if the applicant has demonstrated that they meet 3 of the 7 elements that could not be attained or obtained under conventional site plan.
Madam Chair, that's potentially meet.
Potential,
That's-
let me
yes,
apologize, let me
correct,
say.
Because we're not
That they
proving
potentially
it
meet.
tonight.
We're not proving our theory, we have an inkling.
Okay, well, in that case, I guess I will start by saying that,
More than an inkling, but.
that, 1 and 2, I've got, the 7 items, you want me to just read the 7 items so everybody in the room
Sure,
has
I mean,
a
I can,
sense of-
I can go ahead and do that. So there are, so the zoning ordinance, section 138-535, the applicant shall demonstrate to the city that the PUD provides for the protection of the integrity of the surrounding neighborhood and at least 3 of the following site design elements that could not be attained through a project designed under conventional zoning. Number 1, high-quality architectural design beyond the site plan requirements of this title. Number 2, extensive landscaping beyond the site plan requirements of this title. Number 3, preservation or enhancement of historic resources. Number 4, provision of open spaces or public plaza. Number 5, efficient consolidation of poorly dimensioned parcels. Number 6, shared vehicular access between properties or uses. And number 7, a complementary mix of uses or a variety of housing types. So I think it's fair to suggest that number 3 is kind of off the table because we're not preserving
That's
or
correct.
enhancing a historic resource. And I think it's fair that, number 5, I don't think, because they're not poorly dimensioned parcels.
in my opinion.
One is kind of awkward behind the other, but it's not poorly dimensioned.
I would agree with that opinion.
So we'll cross those off, and we have 5 to work from. So, go ahead,
so-
Joe.
I'll start by saying that I believe 4, 6, and 7 are met. The variety of housing types, shared vehicular access between properties or uses, and provision of open space or public plaza. It seems to me that they very straightforwardly meet those 3 items.
Okay. Other comments?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Shadle.
I agree as well. I think that there's potential. Again, I think I expressed concern about the architectural design. I think there's some work that can be done with that, and I also think there's, appreciate the work that has been done on the landscaping and the green space. Potentially, there's some more there as well. But I also agree exactly that 4, 6, and 7 have been met.
Okay. Ms. Kaplansky.
Yeah, I would agree that 4, 6, and 7 would also be the most applicable. I think there's the opportunity for 1 and 2 to potentially be added in there too. I'd be interested to know what the site plan requirements are for the landscaping. I tried to find them myself, but I was struggling to find any landscape requirements. So without a point of comparison, it's hard to really know whether number 2 would be applicable.
That's okay. I know you weren't. Hey, Marty.
Excuse me.
Oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry.
We'll go around the table, go ahead.
Oh, so
Us.
go ahead, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I
Go
wasn't
ahead.
going
No,
around the
go
table, go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr.
Is
Richardson.
it my turn?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I agree that this plan has the potential to meet at least 3 of the criteria. I'm not saying that I would vote for it tonight. I'm saying I believe it has the potential to meet 1, 2, 4, 6, 7 is a question mark in my mind, because I'm not sure you can't get to 7 through conventional zoning. I think that's a complicated question. I don't want to belabor the record tonight. I think potentially we can meet 3 of these 7 at this stage.
Okay. Mr. Murad, would you like to go?
Well, Mr. Smith has asked
All
to
right,
go, so
okay.
we'll let him go.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I agree. I agree that we have at least 3, 4, maybe 5 here. Number 1, architectural design. There's another way to do this, and I think the PUD is a better approach. Well, we could always rezone the Coolidge property, and then they'd have to come back for a height variance. That's kind of a cumbersome thing. The building straddles the 2 zoning the very west end of the legs straddle the zoning line as it is. Now, what we do gain for architectural design with a PUD, there's a contract. We're going to make some suggestions in the next 6 months when we're talking to them. In the next couple of months as we talk to them about this.
You've angered the HVAC
I
system with
know.
that comment.
Right. There's a lot of hot air over here. We certainly don't want to rezone this to high rise. That's a lot of, that's 120 feet high, 10 stories. But it could be rezoned with a height variance. I don't want to go that way. As I said, the PUD is a contract. We're going to come up with their help back and forth with elevations. It's a contract. They cannot deviate from those elevations.
Yes,
The city of Berkeley, the residents will know what they're getting.
yes,
If we go with the rezoning, it's a rezone.
yes.
They can come back with, what looks like that garage on the previous one. We don't have the control of the exterior with the
Absolutely.
rezoning. So in that respect, high quality of architecture design is a pretty subjective thing. But in the respect of the PUD being a contract, not only in plan, but in elevation and aesthetics, number one, definitely. Number two, extensive landscaping. There's a fair amount of landscaping on this site. Now, I don't know if there's more landscaping in this scheme than there was in the previous scheme. There's a lot of green space between Coolidge and the front of the building, the existing building. However, it's a lot better distributed throughout the site. So I think number two works. Provisions for plazas, open space. Yeah, there's some provisions for that. They're not. It's not the mall, Washington D.C., but they're there, and we're going to talk about that some more too. Number 6, shared vehicular access. Sure. We have two different things going on, and theoretically they are sharing their access. Maybe a little too much in some locations, but we'll talk about that later. The last one, complementary mix of or variety of housing types. That's a definite yes in my eyes, especially in the context of Berkeley. The whole point is to get some new multifamily. Now, there's all kinds of units here. As the way it stands now, they're mostly for rent. There's also some condos for sale. There's a mix. But in the context of what we have currently in Berkeley, with this 142 units, it really adds a variety of housing types that we've been lacking for a long time, especially in the rental sector. So I believe we're all throwing around the word potential. I believe they're there with no problem.
Okay. Mr. Murad?
I agree with a lot of the other comments. I think there is enough in these out of these 7 items, or really the 5 that we're discussing, to move this forward. So
Okay. Burnett?
I would agree.
Okay.
I've heard enough comments from everybody, and I think we have the potential for doing this as a PUD.
So I want to touch on something, Marty, you brought up and you emphasized was the PUD. We get exactly what we want, which
Well,
is.
let me say, we get exactly what they're representing that they're giving us.
Yes, well, we get exactly what we've what we're supposed to get
Exactly.
we're supposed to get exactly what we've contracted for. But if we were to, like for instance, if they were to carve off the back parcel and wanted to develop it into an apartment unit, there is a wide variety of forms and shapes that could take within the ordinance and within our site plan where it would not be as pleasing, perhaps. And it would still meet our standards and,
They can park a row of 3-story, very flat vinyl siding buildings along that west property line.
yes. And so I do think it meets, high quality architectural design. We are a moderate city. We have a lot of charm, but we're not necessarily known for our huge buildings. So this is a lot better looking than any of the apartment buildings than I think we have now. and certainly is a classic look. So, but that gives us the opportunity to fine tune it a little bit more, perhaps. As far as landscaping, you're right, Ms. Kapelansky, we don't have standards per se. And Mr. Dean Smith isn't here, but, or maybe it was you, Mr. Marty Smith, that used the word draconian when we
I don't use,
tried. That
I
was
don't use
that
that
would've
word.
been
that, hopefully he's watching this. We don't want to be so prescriptive here in Berkeley, but, you know, what the standard is, you're right, we're getting probably more than what's there now. And as far as open space, there is a provision for that. It's a nice sized lot, it's not a huge lot, so any carving off of that to use for public space is generous in my opinion, because we're not talking about a 20-acre parcel. And the shared vehicular access, and of course, the mix of housing types. So I do think we have the potential. Do I have any more comments from the commission?
I'd like to comment. We always have to look at this item and compare it to other scenarios in the course of making our decision. In my opinion, the parcel has to be rezoned in some fashion to be utilized. If development
Not
were...
for this.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, if development were to proceed under existing zoning, you could have, and people have talked about the kind of apartment building that you could put there now, and that could make a white elephant out of that school building. That's zoned office now. There wouldn't be enough parking to sustain any office function in that building. So that building would become a white elephant. So if you look at it that way, there has to be some rezoning. And Commissioner Smith talked about the possibility of rezoning that parcel to, to multifamily as well. But as if we're going to rezone, why not pick the rezoning alternative that gives us the most control over the site and over the development of the site? So if you take it as a given that there has to be some rezoning, a PUD makes the most sense by a long shot. And that's how I feel about it.
I agree.
Any other comments from the planning commission?
I'd be with everybody on number 2, the extensive landscaping, if they did one thing, which is move that row of trees that's really close to the building now over to the west side of that parking lot. That would get me totally on board with it.
Which one again?
Which trees?
See that row of trees that's going right down the middle of the parking lot there?
Oh,
Not the one that goes east-west, the one that goes north-south.
Yes.
In my view, it'd be nicer to have that on the west side of all those parking spaces because you get the canopy closer to the neighborhood. That's just my opinion.
And not to argue it, but those on the far west side will be tall, mature.
Sure,
10
there's still
foot.
evergreens though, they're not canopy, so. Just the point I'm making is you wind up with an understory and an overstory if you put the canopy closer to the western property line.
Well, we're not getting to design.
Yeah, we're not.
yeah, we're not getting into the design weeds,
Yeah.
but thanks. Okay,
That's down the road.
so Mr. Wood.
Relative to your suggestions, again, from the get-go, we've had no problem working with the city on a planned unit development. We don't feel there is anything that we can't live up to, will not agree to in a contractual form. Everything that we've been presenting to you all along, we're ready to deliver. And it's something that we will stand behind. Again, just to reaffirm, this will be a contract. This will be a contract that we will carry through. It'll be recorded within the courts, and these designs, these plans, everything will be taken care of from A to Z.
Okay, thank you. So I think we'll open up to public comment, and so as you approach the microphone, once you're up, please give us your name and city of residence, and as usual, let's keep comments brief, and if they've been made before, let the next person go, I guess, so we can,
Kurt Height, Berkeley. One of the first things I did is you guys covered it pretty well, just that I had made up a form, because I think the last time we went through this, I don't think the benefits and questions of whether or not it fulfilled the requirement for a PUD really matched, or was really discussed as thorough as it was this time. So ahead of time, and I'll hand them out anyway, because I had already made it, but
is this,
I had made a form ahead of time that kind of, I felt, allowed all the questions to be asked.
okay, that needs to go to the city manager as well to get into the record, please.
Anyways, that being said, I felt you guys did a more thorough discussion this time. I really appreciated that. Now, as far as what we see, I think, what we see, this new pre-app, the site plan, it looks really nice. The building is beautiful. I do appreciate the attempt, the changes that were made. I do feel that still the church maybe lacking in parking a little bit. It feels like they did address some of the parking. I would still like to see a consideration for like the podium, the park being raised up and having a little bit more parking there. I think that would help alleviate that a little bit. And when I saw that they had removed the school building and they moved the development closer to Coolidge, I felt it was definitely the way to go. I was happy to see that we were getting closer to providing the 2 parking spots per unit. I did have a few questions. I did notice that in the total number of parking available, it was listed as 268, but it says at the very bottom on the right that they include the 16 spots in the land bank, and that kind of confused me, because I thought the church wanted to leave that as their property for future use, and I really think we need to really come to a conclusion. Are we counting that as parking? Are we not counting it as parking? Are we going to require them to pave it if they're going to count it as parking and just be done with it? I really would like a decision, rather than going back and forth with, it is parking and counted in the numbers, but it's not being used right now. And that would be something I would like. And again, I still would like to see how this coordinates with the church as far as parking, because I feel like we're below, I think by the code, I think they're supposed to have much more, but I think I've heard them kick around the number of 170 for the peak, and I think we're at right around 140, 145.
Mr. Wright, can I interrupt you for a minute?
Yep.
So this discussion is purely on whether it has the potential to meet the
Okay.
7 elements of a planned unit development. We are not into the design details. I mean, they are in.
Right, I just felt that it would be
And that
better
would be
that
for the
when we get to
discussion on our
the
third
next one,
point.
that rather than we
If
get to
we-
something where we got to.
I understand, but if we move forward with this and recommend this
Yeah.
to move on, then we will have a discussion on the third point of that, because this is not about the design at the moment, so.
Right, and
I
now
appreciate it,
Josh
so-
had emailed a letter in, and I really liked some of his suggestions. I hope you guys had a chance to read his email.
Have his
Because I just feel that in some ways, when they talk about efficiency of the parcels, I really think that the layout of it is really not much different. You can still go into that winding road, you can still exit on Oxford in both areas, and you can still exit on Harvard. So I don't really think they're changing any of the conditions. I just feel that I talked to them earlier, and I just felt the townhouses, even though they want to include those, I feel it kind of disrupts it, because if you didn't have the townhouses there, you could almost have the parking for the apartment completely behind the building and not rely on a shared parking with the church. And I think that would be, something that would be really cool to strive for, even though they want to include that and they want to have the mixed use. I just think that it'd be better if the parking for the apartment was more on that parcel, and that would be more efficient in my mind than having it, strewn across to, a block, wide area, kind of staggered like that. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Wendy Zabramski. I live at 3340 Gardner. I had a couple of concerns. the developer, says he has the finest quality, and over the time, we've heard that they're Pinnacle Homes, and we've heard that Village Green Apartments would be managing the apartments. And I did some research because I remember an incident years ago, and the high quality, what I'm hearing a lot, or what I'm seeing a lot in research, is that Pinnacle Homes, after the sale, after the closing of the deal, there's a lot of concern from people, some negative, even on the BBB. Also, Village Green Apartments in general, they're not managed well. They're not attended to with, with.
Okay, I don't mean to interrupt, but again, this discussion is
No, I'm
about
just-
whether or not it meets the elements
I get that.
of the PUD. So there is an opportunity for discussion on the finer points if it moves forward.
I get that,
Do you
but
have
I
any
just-
comments with respect to the 7 elements of the PUD? That, whether it meets the potential for that?
No,
And I'm
I'm
inviting you
just
back
saying
up when we
this
get
is
to
the
item, if we
only
get to
thing-
item number 3.
What I'm saying is that this is the only thing we've had to look at, and I'm concerned about further down the road, and that, so that's what my intent. I don't know if there'll be other open discussion tonight for this, that's all.
I mentioned there will be. If we get to item number 3, there will be more discussion. Thank you. Does anybody else have any, from the public, have any comments with respect to the potential to meet the requirements of a PUD? Okay, seeing nobody rushing to the microphone, as Mr. Barnett would say, what is the will of the Planning Commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Smith.
I would like to I've lost everything here, shuffling through these. I guess we're making a motion to approve that there is keep hearing the word, potential for recognizable benefit for Berkley Coolidge LLC, this project. So I'd like to make the motion to approve that and move along.
Is there a second? All right. Mr. Baumgartner.
Should our motion include the elements that we feel it meets?
Yes.
All right,
That was going to be
so,
my editorial.
Well,
Four,
is
six,
there-
and-
do you want to make them, Mr.? This is-
Do I
we
need to
have-
read through it again?
Just pick the numbers.
1, 2, 4, kind of 6, and 7. That's 4.5. If everybody's doing the math.
All right.
And I'm undecided about 7, that's why
Okay.
But,
You have
but
plenty.
it meets more than.
We meet
Sure,
3.
it meets more than 3, but
All right.
I think that's all we need to say.
Okay.
personally.
I'll agree on the motion.
Okay. Mr. Baumgarten, would you like to call the roll?
Yes, I would. On the motion on the table, who had the support on that?
I did.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Barnett,
Yes.
Tradle,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Murad,
Yes.
Kaplansky,
Yes.
Tangary,
Yes.
M. Smith,
Yes.
and Buckler.
Yes.
All right, motion approved.
Okay.
Okay, so now we get to item number 3. Item number 3 is discussion, consideration of outstanding items pertaining to the planned unit development, PUD 01-17, Berkley Coolidge LLC, 2219 Coolidge Highway, southwest corner of Coolidge and Oxford, tax IDs 2518-431-015, 016, 017, and a portion of 022, lots 13 through 15, and 52, 53 of the Denler Acres subdivision. So, I think we'll reverse it this time. We will take public comment and then discuss amongst the planning commission. And it is a discussion, so we can have back and forth with the applicant.
Perfect.
But let's get all the comments out that people have. And I'm sorry if I cut you off before, but I thought I was clear that we were talking about the elements of the PUD. So if we have your comments already. If you've made them, we will draft them into this section. But again, please announce your name and,
Sure. Wendy Sabramski. I
Okay.
live on Gardner in Berkeley. Yeah, in my research, the Village Green Apartments seem to be very poorly managed, seem to be very poorly maintained after the sale. Okay. I'm looking at several in the area, and the reason I even looked into it is because I remember a building years ago that I went into as part of my job, and, was pretty disgusted with what the building consisted of. And, they weren't that old of apartments at the time. So I just, want this to be aware that, this is the only applicant we've had. And, he is a high yielding salesman, or a high energy salesman. And I just want you to know what's out there, and maybe if you're interested, you could look at the research I've done. Thank you.
next.
Kurt Height, Berkeley again. Just back to some of the things I was saying. I mean, I had originally thought, when I heard some of the discussion about density last time, that I was, that the other plan was too dense for this area, and I was kind of hoping, yes, when I heard we were moving it towards Coolidge, that was great. I had hoped that it came in a little bit smaller. It seems to be that we're around 130 number, and we seem to be stuck on that. And it seems if we could come in, even if it was 106 or 100, that it would be much easier to meet the parking requirements, and also shrinking the building a little bit, you could further improve, like the landscaping, whether it's more trees or grass on the sides. I mean, I did like just a little mock-up, and it's not like the greatest, but I just wanted to show that I just felt that there's a way that you could make it feel like it was a lot more open and green. And I got two that you guys can share back and forth. Just I took out 2 or 4 apartments in the middle there, and the building otherwise is the same dimensions. And just to show that you could put like trees on the side, and just the way it looked, there's a lot more green or whatever. If you could pass it that way. And I just thought that would be something that then you could say that, yes, this site, as far as landscaping goes, above and beyond, because I feel like right now, when you look at the space that's available, I mean, that building right there is taken up from one area to another. There's not much give. There's not much room on either side, and it looks, and I'm not knocking the building. It does look great. I do appreciate your effort. I'm just, from my feeling, I thought that I was hoping to hear something that came in a little bit smaller than the original plan for 130 units. And I think that, to me, is the biggest detriment of it. And I would like to see something get done. I want to see this passed. I've told my parents I felt that this is a place that they could downsize to. That this development, if it happens, this seems like it'd be a great place. I don't know anything about the Village Green and how they conduct, but I'm going to take them. I got to take them at their word as far as everything's going to be. It seems like it's going to be a high-end place, and I really want to see this get done. And that's where my concern is. That I see these things. I just feel like if it was a little bit smaller, it could just look like it blended a lot better into the area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Rachel Picentini in Oxford. I just have a question. Can you go to a certain picture? Sure. The one that shows it, I think it's from Coolidge. Yeah, so that's Coolidge, right? So can we find out, or can someone tell us, how far that building is from Coolidge and how far that building is from Oxford? Because it looks really close to the street. So do we know the answer to that?
It's on the
But I'm looking at your thing right here.
20 feet?
So the school came out on the tops, the top of the, what are we calling this, an I? That's how far the school came out?
10 feet.
Right, so I'm asking how far the rest of the building is to Coolidge, and then how far that building is to Oxford. Is it sit the same exact spot where the school sits now in proportion to Oxford?
Yeah, if you want to.
Yeah.
Let the architect answer it.
Joe, stand up to the microphone.
Yeah, Joe, can't hear you.
Joe Novitsky.
Love the mini scale.
This is, we were encouraged to bring the building as close as we could to the street, and we actually brought back the center portion to relieve that burden of an entire wall. So this was by design. More urban design ultimately asks for there to be no green space along Coolidge, and we maintained that 10 feet between the sidewalk and the building on even the closer elements, and the part on Oxford here is 2 feet more than what exists now in the gymnasium.
Okay, so it's the parts that protrude closer to Coolidge are 10 feet from Coolidge. That's what I'm trying to get an answer
10
from.
feet from the sidewalk.
10 feet from the sidewalk. Okay, and then on Oxford, how far is it to the sidewalk?
5 to 7 feet. It angles slightly. You can see it's not perfectly square. These two edges are not square in the city, so we split it.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
Sure.
Eventually, put these dimensions on the plan, because I know it's,
Yeah.
yeah, on the building plan, there's no dimensions either. It's just a good thing to know, so, understood. Perfect.
Ms. Kapelansky has a mini scale, though, and she's measuring. So,
If the drawings are to scale.
Not nice to scale. Okay, I got one.
My name is Joyce Ross, and I live on Phillips, and I'm coming to the party a little late. How many townhouses are there going to be?
8.
8.
And who will those be managed by?
They're privately owned. They will be sold
The condo
as a
association.
condo.
Owner occupied.
Okay, who's going to manage the maintenance and the grounds?
The condo
The
association.
condo association, whoever they choose as a board.
Okay, it's not uncommon for a small condo development to have a hard time finding a management company that's going to do it. And I think that could lead to potential problems down the road.
I think so. I mean, we'll take that under advisement. I mean, Harvard Commons is going to have a similar challenge, so there's one right across the street that is also going to have a management company.
I just know that other communities have had that problem where if there's a small development, management companies, they don't make that much money. So then it becomes an eternal thing. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we can put that in their contract, in the PUD.
Nancy Carano, 2689 Harvard. I'm in the Harvard Commons, so can I address that last comment?
Certainly.
Okay. The builder brought with him a property management company. There are only 18 condos in our whole unit. Eventually, it may be self-managed because there are only 18. With the condos that you're speaking of, I would like to assume that you have contacts with property management companies. And the property management companies do take care of everything. It's pretty contained, and you have your board members coordinating with everything. So it most likely won't be an issue just because I've had experience with it already. So.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask you a
Yes,
question?
sir.
May I ask you a question? Were you a Berkeley resident before you moved into Harvard Commons?
No.
Good, thank you.
More comments?
Hi, Chuck Terrell from Berkeley. I will address one piece of landscaping, is that a living roof is not landscaping. It's not on the land, it's in the roof. And living roof can add approximately 100 pounds per square foot to the building load, to the roof load. So is that, when we bandied about, we're going to put sedums up there, Grand total about 100 pounds per square foot, so that's got to be taken into account in the building structure itself if a living roof is going to be part of things.
Yes, and we understand that a green roof is not landscaping, but, and green roofs have come a long way since they were first introduced. They can be significantly lighter than 100 pounds per square foot, depending on the vegetation that they select. And what it does provide, though, is an opportunity for them to better control storm water over a fairly large area of that site more efficiently than if it were a traditional asphalt roof. It also helps, decrease the heat sink of that area and is overall kind of aesthetics. So there is more modern designs for green roofs, and there's been some great advances, but there's green roofs that have been, when did Ford put theirs in now? It's been like 15 years, I think, and it's been, so it's been running well.
Madam Chair, may I
Yes,
direct
good.
a question to Mr. Baumgarten?
Sure.
At what point, Matt, would we be able to expect some feedback from the DPW on stormwater management issues connected with this site?
DPW and our engineering department, but they're an outside contractor. They've been weighing in on this parcel throughout, so they've talked about things like where the new piping needs to go, what the detention looks like, what the requirements that they be held to. But until we see the site plan become a little bit more stabilized and solidified, it'll be after that point where we see a more thorough and robust engineering report coming back to you. I've got general comments that were relayed that really remain unchanged from previous conversations as far as the need for detention, the need for the sanitation and the sanitary sewer and the storm sewers to be disconnected and let out to the nearest mains separately. Stormwater needs to be detained. Green roof is a step in the right direction. It will be included in the stormwater detention calculations. Those types of conversations have not changed significantly since our last conversation.
Well, just a comment. Stormwater management's on all of our minds, and we typically approve site plans subject to subsequent approvals by county and municipal authorities. I'm just wondering if we can get input from them prior to considering whether to approve this next month. I mean, is that feasible, or?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
We can get conversations prior to whenever you guys finally do, get around to considering this, as if the sense is that the site plan is become more concrete than it has been, then yes, we can get some more substantial reviews in place, but
okay.
we'll try to have that provided to you you can make the best recommendation possible. And then it is possible, even given that this is, looks like it's going to move forward as a PUD, even that it becomes a contingent condition of it moving forward to city council, is that becomes more solidified.
That's typically the way we do it. I just like to get input as soon as, not empty input, real input.
Right.
But in all fairness, that is DPW's job, and our engineering department's job is to review this and that it meets the standard. There's a county standard and a local, our local ordinance and our county ordinance, and state and federal, exactly. So they're not going to get their permit to start digging in the ground until that's approved. We are not engineers. I mean, we want to, and we often approve site plans to move forward, assuming that our building department, just like an electrical inspection, we're not going to spec, that they have a ground fault interface plug in here in this particular spot or this particular KVA service. It's like that is required. Our DPW, our engineering department, does that review before they either give occupancy or site plan. So stormwater is actually the least of my concerns because there's an ordinance that covers that. More importantly is, are we getting this right with the PUD, and are we getting the elements that we want as a city moving forward? So I am not worried about stormwater.
agree.
Because it will be handled, because they can't get their building permit without it.
I understand all that, and I've made similar comments myself on past applications, but it's a very important public issue.
I understand, but we have
you
a
know,
great engineering, we have great support with Hubble Rock and Clark.
I
and our
think it's in the
internal
public
thinking.
interest to have that discussion in an
Sure,
open
sure,
forum.
Sure.
If possible. I mean, I'm not asking for
No, I know.
an empty input.
Right.
Yeah. And I will note that one of the benefits of moving forward of this as a PUD is that the Planning Commission and the City Council would be well within their ability, and it's provided by ordinance to set reasonable conditions on such a project. So while certainly, Madam Chair, the minimums are in place and enforced, there is a potential to
Go beyond.
yes, oversize the system as we look forward to the future and
Sure,
and an
absolutely.
admittedly unknown
Absolutely.
future.
Sure.
And,
Mr. Martin.
and we have to remember too, there is no water retention currently on this site.
Exactly.
So when they rebuild all these parking lots, they're gonna put retention in.
All of
So-
them.
All of them. all of
Right
them.
now, water runs, I don't even know that they have storm drains on the site.
There's storm drains, but they're not restricted.
But there's no
Yeah.
retention.
All right. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Annalise Petrus. I live on Franklin and Berkeley. Could you go to the slide that has the 3D view from Coolidge? Yeah, that one. So it looks like this is a 5-story building. I have some questions in regards to this. What's the existing height of the school?
2.5.
I believe the school is 2.5 stories.
Yeah, I'd say close to 30, 35.
With the gym.
So the other question I have is what type of framing will this be? Will this be wood or metal?
It's
Concrete on the main level, but
and wood above that.
for 4 floors. How much will the rents go for?
Would you like me to speak now?
Certainly, you can answer that question. This is a discussion period.
The rents are going to vary. They depend upon the size of the unit, the,
Want to step up to the microphone?
The rents are going to vary. The rents will vary depending upon the size of the unit, the type of the unit. There are going to be some other aspects that, might make some, call it more premium, depending upon where they're located, the kind of view that they have, other elements along the line. But basically, it's depending upon the size of the units. Again, we've got studio units, 1-bedroom units, 1 bedrooms with dens, 2-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units with dens, and it varies. And all of them, and not all of them, but many of them have different sizing and different types of settings to it.
Yeah, thank you for explaining the diversity of that. Would you please provide a rent range of what these will go for?
From about roughly $900 up to about $1,800. Again, depending upon the size.
Okay,
Does that help
thank
you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And then, what is the ground floor material that you're,
That is it's masonry, a block construction, and steel as well. The foundations are built into it that'll go subgrade.
okay, great.
Above that is a wood construction with masonry surrounding it.
Okay, thank you for providing more input. I do really applaud the effort at providing continued efforts to revise the plans, to provide a variety of housing to the community. I would prefer to see something not as tall. I think it would be more contextual to our community to be 4 stories, 3.5 stories. At 5 stories, and what it looks like on these drawings, it's about 54 feet, which is within 1 foot of being a high-rise building, which is a demand on the fire station. It's a demand on the community's infrastructure. I think it would be better served to blend into the community better with 3 stories above parking. And the other item with that is that if you go to the site plan, this circular drive that's in the front seems dangerous to pedestrians and also to drivers, that because the building projects out, drivers will have to pull their car forward, and as people walk through to get to the Frosty Freeze or to school, they've got to now cross 2 paths of car traffic. Otherwise, they're walking through the sidewalk into near the apartments by their door. I think that that would be better served to be relocated or removed. As for the trash, it seems very undersized for 134 apartments. It also is unfortunate that the trash is facing Coolidge. It seems like there's a very large parking lot.
Where is it facing Coolidge?
Isn't that the trash
Behind
right
the
there?
green space.
The trash container, yes,
I don't
that's
like the
going to be an enclosed trash container.
Must be
Trash
closer
container
than walk to it, though.
that'll be sized appropriately for the
Be
building.
screened.
And the number of times that we may have it picked up
We'll
on a
probably have
weekly
every other day
basis
click 'em.
will depend upon once we see what that demand is. As far as the circular drive, that is only a pickup and drop-off point. And so
It's
to
still
let-
crossing pedestrian traffic. I mean, for a Main Street atmosphere, it's rather unfortunate to introduce 2 new drive lanes.
I've
Yeah,
driveways
they're
there.
going to be a lot less used than I think that you're assuming.
Well, parcels, you'd have to
But,
have
I
driveways
mean,
there.
the thing that makes Berkeley so attractive to its residents now and to future residents is that it's a walkable city.
That's the encouragement of.
So having this drop-off
Let's bring this
lane
back
in
up toward
front
us.
is,
Yeah,
I think, just really unfortunate.
I think it's important to know, too, if this parcel for, God forbid the church were to go away or something, if it was divided into normal commercial lots in and out, you would potentially have more driveways. You could have 5 or 6 driveways along that block easily.
But wouldn't those driveways have to be approved by the city prior to doing something like that?
Absolutely, but if the
So
parcels were
potential-
broken up, if it was broken up into multiple parcels, or if this was commercial, you would have 2 or 3 egresses along here as well if this was a strip mall. You'd have at least 2, if not a third, depending on what that is. So we do take your point into consideration, but we don't think it's an unreasonable number of egress points.
I just want to qualm one other
Sure.
element, and that is about fire protection. And if you think there's inadequacy to the fire protection, we have met with representatives from the Department of Public Safety. They feel that this is something that they can and will be able to handle. As far as the burden upon the infrastructure, this is the intent of improving this property so that it can improve this entire portion of the community. So all those things, as Mr. Richardson was asking about relative to the civil engineering, these are things that are all going to be handled in a professional manner in an order that once we have a site plan that is agreed upon, we will then get to work on the next level of calculations. Those calculations that we make will be interpreted by the Department of Public Works, the outside civil engineering consultants, the Oakland County Drain Commission, and any other body that needs to make that clear. So we're hoping that helps you to understand that we're not trying to add any burdens. This should alleviate burdens.
Sure, I think I was referring to the fire department had weighed in when it was a previous design, not when it was 5 stories.
Yes, they did.
It's,
It was,
Yes.
because previous to this, it was,
yes.
okay. Would you also go to that 3D view? So this ground floor that's parking and rather transparent, I've been past many apartments that are like this, a podium building, what happens in these situations is that the parking has to be rather bright for crime and safety. So what I envision here at night is that this ground floor will be very bright. And I think there could be more screening of this. It's also possible to relook at it where you could put apartments or two-story housing at the perimeter and put the parking back inside behind that. Still within the building, but pulling that living down to the ground floor. I think that would be more user-friendly, it would be more contextual to what we see all along. It also makes a great opportunity for work-live units. One of the big successes with work-live apartments is foot traffic. And this is a great area for foot traffic. So you could, I think it's something worth looking at. You could increase your square footage. And, you know, I think that what will happen in the end with this parking, it would be very industrial looking rather than Main Street, and how our Coolidge is developing with all these boutique shops and restaurants. I'd also like to see a little bit more contemporary ground floor than these stone coins that doesn't seem to relate to anything else historic within our community. So I hope there's still just time to make some refinements to this.
All right, thank you.
Brandon Alger. I live in Meadow Farm, sub of Berkeley. I thought those were some great comments that she just gave recently. A lot of really valid points were brought up. I wanted to address just an idea that I had while she was talking about the sidewalk that will cut, that the driveways will cut across a sidewalk twice. And I don't even know if this is feasible. From a plan view, it looks like it could potentially be feasible. Instead of taking the sidewalk across it, would it be possible or even reasonable to take a sidewalk around through the interior cutout there? Looking at it from this angle, from where I was over there, it looks a little more intense to do that, but
I think they're doing that.
an idea worth considering. I don't know if that ends up
It's
being
on there.
reasonable.
It's on the map.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Okay.
The
Okay. Well,
little
this looks like
yellow-
the main city sidewalk. It does cut across.
It's kind of yellow in color on the.
Okay. Okay. But yeah, I mean, if the sidewalk were to come in toward the building and come back out, then you're not crossing traffic twice there. That would be helpful in addressing that. It would address possibly some pedestrian safety issues as well. But and the notes I made for myself to say, I've been critical of this for a while, but I think it's come a really long way from the 5-story building that was 20 feet away from the house on Oxford to begin with. So I'm happy to see that the feedback that has been given has brought this to the point where it is now, where I agree that the vote that was made previously, that it has potential to meet 3 of those 7 criteria is completely valid. And I would be critical enough to say I don't think it's there yet, but it certainly could get there. It has merit. It has potential. The PUD is certainly the right way to go, but I think that allows you all to be very critical and to address some of the comments the woman before me brought up that are a lot more refined and detailed than my own comments. You guys should hire her or something. No. but seriously, the PUD gives you an ability to really comb through this and get those types of issues addressed, so that what we end up having is something that is exciting and fantastic to be in the city of Berkeley for as long as as long as I live here, if I end up spending the rest of my life in Berkeley. One integrity concern that I would have, traffic at Harvard. I don't know how often everyone up here or anyone that's planning this turns out of that in the morning. The stoplight on Harvard to Coolidge does get pretty backed up in the mornings. I know that's kind of what the developer has indicated will be the direction of traffic to flow out is to go out to Harvard, turn east, and then use that to get onto Coolidge, which reasonably makes sense. But I will say, if you, especially during the school year when the crossing guard has the crossing traffic across Coolidge, it's not wide enough for a left turn and a right turn going east onto Coolidge from Harvard. So the left turn traffic will sometimes wait and block any of the right turn or straight traffic, which does back that light up frequently. It's not uncommon for me to sit through 2 lights and turn on the 3rd light from there when I'm leaving at 7:30 in the morning. I know that sounds extreme, but it does happen. I'm not exaggerating. Please don't be too skeptical of that.
There's no one there at 6:30 in the morning when I'm coming through, other than it always turns red as I'm heading down.
Right. No, and I typically
By
leave early. If I'm leaving
by
at
design,
6:30,
keep
if
it
I'm
at
leaving
30
at
miles an hour.
6:30, it's fine. If I'm leaving at 6:30, it's fine. When I get there, if I'm leaving late for work and I'm at 7:30,
So we have-
7:45,
We have traffic studies on this as well that I think are online. Is
and
the
I would
traffic
hope
study?
those took into consideration school crossing traffic. That is ultimately what ends up backing that intersection
take
up.
all of that into account,
That's
yes.
when I sit through 2 stoplights is when the crossing guard is holding up the left turn traffic, which appropriately so. Another critique that could be given to this, and
Brandon, I mean to interrupt. Where's the crossing guard you're talking about?
I'm going to step away from the microphone and point out.
Sure.
So this is Coolidge northbound,
Yeah.
yes? Right here, the crossing guard is here. So if someone's coming this direction and turning left onto Coolidge, the crossing guard will hold that up so only one car turns left, and the right turn or straight traffic behind
Okay.
that car turning left doesn't get an opportunity to go. That backs it up pretty far. If we're talking about a number, I won't put an exact number, the traffic study has that, but if we're talking about we're talking about a number of people using that exit as well, if that's kind of the primary exit for a morning commute, that's going to get worse. It's going to exacerbate an existing problem that at this point isn't bad. I don't really complain about it, but if I had to sit through 4 or 5 stoplights, that becomes bad.
Okay, all right.
Number 7, one of the PUD application criteria that a lot of you were happy with was the mix of use. I know that I've made my ideas clear on that in the past, and some feedback has not been super positive, but I still maintain that 5.8% of the entire total units in the entire building being owned condos and the entire remainder of that being rental apartments is a really poor mix of use. I shouldn't say it's a poor mix of use, but for what you can get out of being critical and using a PUD, you could potentially get something more mixed than that, but ultimately that's your decision. If that's what you agree is the best mix of use from Berkeley, I assume you probably know better than I. Provision of open space, they do have some open space. I don't know that that's much larger than my backyard, but it is open space. I think that's another opportunity to be critical. Just some thoughts. Yeah, that's all I have, unless you have any questions for me. All right, thanks.
No, thank you. We're good. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to bring it back up to the Planning Commission.
Could I speak to just a moment to
Certainly.
address
Briefly.
some of these items?
Briefly.
Sure. There was a point that was made relative to the parking and its that we were providing and its requirements. And again, I just want to reinforce that we are meeting two spaces per unit, and there should be no confusion about that anymore.
Okay.
It's two spaces per unit. So the PUD allows for a greater flexibility, but even with the existing zoning ordinance, we meet that. There was some discussion or statement about our partners and our management company. I have to come to their defense. In essence, Village Green, as our property management company, I've said it before, manages 40,000 units in the country, has won many BOMA awards, and for those that don't know about BOMA, that is the governing authority of some of the best property management groups that by a statewide basis or a national basis. And Pinnacle Homes, that somebody may have filed a complaint, I'm sorry I can't answer to that, but one person can make, for the Better Business Bureau, an F out of if anybody else was. Again, the setbacks from the sidewalk and from both sidewalks, we were encouraged to come up to those points, and we have done that. For the condos and how they'll be managed, no, we have not picked a property management company. That's not going to be something that we are addressing at this moment. It will be somebody of high caliber. We will not let it tarnish our building, and that's something that I would hope that everybody understands. This is still an image that we have to maintain and want to retain for many, 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 many years to come. We will be owners of this building. We have provided as an offering to the city to sell these condos. Initially, we wanted to build them and lease them, but we're fine with selling them. But they will be properly maintained, and that'll be something that'll be worked into our agreement to whomever does develop those condos, principally ourselves, and ultimately to their board of directors. Relative to the living roof and the pounds per square foot, no issue whatsoever. But we're doing this by true intent. And the intent is we could put up certainly a simple flat membrane roof and allow for the water to run off as it naturally does. And then the dispersion becomes a little bit harder on the systems. We're, number one, trying to be conscientious of the city Berkeley and some problems that have been existing in the city for a number of years, and we want to do everything we can to help that situation. So it starts on the top of the roof by filtering any kind of the rainwater itself and allowing in a trickle effect that will be dispersed into a next, most likely a system that will have essentially cobblestones and bricks with a sediment underneath it that'll continue to filter it before it ever gets to the systems. And what we don't have left, or what we do have left over, will be in underground storage. And again, filtered before it's discharged, and the discharge will be more of a trickle than certainly a rush. Mr. Richardson, I hope I don't, have to, again, we intend to keep with every element of the requirements of the Department of Public Works, outside city consultants who, as Hubble, Roth, and Clark, I think they handle about 100 different communities in this state. And that's their expertise, and they will represent you. I can tell you, I've worked with them for decades. They're extraordinary. They will work very hard on your behalf, protecting your city. And from there, there's another element of protection, and that's going to be the Oakland County Road. I'm sorry, the Oakland County Drain Commission.
All right. Can we?
I think that just pretty much consolidates, and I hope everybody is a little bit more appeased with that.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to bring it back up to the table here. Comments? Would like to start? Mr. Kapelanski.
So I just have a couple minor comments on the site plan itself. The first being that I'd like to know how pedestrians are going to safely get across the parking lot and to the building entrance. So if there's some sort of punch-through sidewalk or something in that landscape island with appropriate striping, it would just be good to see something to get people safely to the entrance to the building.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Were you referring to the back parking lot?
Yes.
Getting into
Yes, because I assume they're going to enter from the rear of the building if they're parking back
if
there.
you make that clear, that the back green area here is the courtyard, and principally our main entrance is in through that area right there.
Yeah, I guess I'm talking about getting visitors or residents from, that area
Mhm.
over to the green space.
No, we
So maybe a
There will-
punch-through sidewalk, some
no,
striping.
there'll be something, that'll be something that it'll distinguish it if that's your concern, that, yes, we will.
Somebody darts out from the tree, I mean, I'd be concerned.
Yeah, I
It's
did-
like,
yeah.
there needs to be something where it's more like your opening is a little further north on that tree line, so that it kind of
Lines up
the city, and that
appropriately.
other tree may have to
No,
go.
it'll be all well lit. We didn't show the photometrics on this as we, again, once we get some idea of where the buildings be, we'll put photometrics, but there will be a lighted way.
Yeah, we get that.
Security is a major issue.
Okay.
So the general layout of the site,
Next to a church.
I'm fairly pleased with. It was good to see the incorporation of additional green space on the site. It would be nice to see, I know rain gardens are a hot topic right now, so it would be nice to see those incorporated somehow, maybe in some demonstration areas. My biggest concern, though, is with the elevations. If you could flip over to those. So I appreciate the way that there's relief to provide some texture and some variation in the elevations, but I'm still seeing a lot of ephes, and I know that's subjective, but personally, I'm not a fan of ephes. I don't think it's one of the highest quality building materials from an aesthetic point of view, and I'm really struggling with seeing a building come down that's all brick and being replaced by something that's 50% brick and 50% ephes, just, guessing on what those percentages would be. But that is my biggest concern at this point. I know the DDA is working on their design guidelines, so I know they haven't gotten to the point of recommendations, but I believe they're moving towards high-quality brick-type materials. So this is the only thing I'm really struggling with right now is the facade materials, not even the elevation design itself, just the materials.
Back and approach for just a moment.
Sure.
If
And
I
since
may,
this came up
it costs the same.
Last time.
and the use of it, the quality of it. Packages here.
I'll share.
Not to minimize that statement that you're making, but, and I know you are within this industry, but ephes is a brick. It happens to be a thinner brick, but it's also carrying insulation. It's an easier brick to put upon the buildings, but it's still screwed down. It is glued down. It has vapor barriers within it. It stands the test of time. And if you could just simply scan the printouts that you have there, you're going to see some of the finest buildings in the world that have been using ephes for decades and decades and decades. It's not a new product. It stands up against any brick, any other element. Again, it is masonry.
It's also the same cost.
Yeah.
So from my subjective point of view, I still think it looks different than regular brick.
If I may say, it's, first off, it is not going to be as much within view. I mean, you'd have to be awfully tall to really see into the ephes. But the product itself is used by so many different categories, from hotels, office buildings, certainly residential. Retailers use it in mass now, and it's not about cost. It's about using a product that looks good. You don't know it's ephes until you're on top of it, and it stands the test of time. I'm talking about stuff that I've had put in many, many decades ago. Zero change, and it's just so widely used today that it's why it came up for discussion as being an inferior product. I'm surprised. It is something that actually this commission even suggested that we use a portion of it.
Yep, and this is just, one commissioner, one opinion.
Okay.
It's not, it's
No,
two.
it's not.
Three.
So take it for what you want.
We do, but again, if I might just suggest to you, it is not being put in an area that, on a lower level, that is going to compromise it. It's not going to be something, we have to be proud of it. We want this to have a brick appearance. It is brick. And again, it's a thinner brick, and it's not to deviate from it, but it is much easier to install.
Yep, and I can appreciate that, and I think it simulates the look of brick. My concern is that it isn't actually masonry brick.
Well, I would encourage you to look at the package itself. I think it might help sway your thoughts on that.
That's all I had.
Pointing me.
to-
Joe?
So to follow up on the ephes, is it a drained or face sealed ephes?
Drained.
Drained, okay, drained.
That help improve it? Okay.
Well, that increases the likelihood that the building is not going to get moldy and stuff, so
Yes,
that's,
absolutely.
I've used it down that way. Mixed
I guess I'll keep going.
Go ahead, Joe, keep going.
So, I know there's still some kind of conceptual stuff. You don't have a final landscape plan here, but I'll throw out some thoughts on the landscaping. I kind of mentioned it earlier that one of the things that was kind of, I don't know, you got that one planting strip north-south there close to the building. I kind of would prefer it more toward the middle of that parking lot or toward the west side. I don't know if anybody agrees with me, but to me, getting it further from the building and putting it more toward the middle spreads the landscaping through the site a little bit better, and it moves the canopy around so that it's, you know, it's a little closer to the neighborhoods, and it I don't know, I just feel like it provides better screening to the neighbors if it's a little bit closer to the houses. But literally a strip right down the middle of that parking lot, I think just would make a little more sense to me visually.
There was a little bit of discussion on traffic patterns related,
Mhm.
that has something to do with.
Sure, I can appreciate
as well
that.
as also providing some screening for the homeowners of the townhouses and the people enjoying the garden common area.
Right. Well, I like the one that's behind the townhouses. I got no problem with that. It's the north-south one that just, I understand what you're saying in terms of how the drive aisles work with where people are pulling out, but in terms of the absolute location of the trees, I just find it generally more pleasing to have it more in the middle of the expanse of asphalt.
If I may, Joe? If you take a look and imagine yourself driving in and out of this site.
Sure.
When you drive along here, this is a protected area. We're trying to really encourage low volume and low speeds.
Sure.
This is a parking room, if you will. There's only 4 rows of parking there.
Mhm.
It's tiny.
Yeah,
I mean,
I can
really,
appreciate
it's
that.
tiny. And so that will provide a grand avenue separating the residential edge of this property and the commercial. I think it's a wonderful statement on separation. It gives the real recreational area a boundary. It gives the vehicular traffic a clear indication of where they should be, and it slows everything down. Putting it in the middle just mucks it up.
I like having it there. I just kind of wish there was something more on the other side. It just, I don't know.
We will look at it.
Mhm.
There were purposes behind where it's located.
Sure.
We can take another look at it, see if we can scatter it in
Mhm.
some manner.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
locate it.
Um,
What's purpose in it.
Are- Mhm.
Residential, is way up here, is it Kipling? Is it Kipling Street? I think that's what it is?
Well, it's actually right there on Oxford, but
No, well, I understand that, but these are 20-plus foot high
sure.
spruce. And so I'm just saying this, even if you put trees here, there's no one until here whose backyard is even visible.
Mhm.
And they're blocked by all these spruce trees, which are green all year long, so I'm just.
And I think that spruce tree adds, is a vast improvement over what the neighbor has now.
Well, sure, definitely. Yeah, I
Now he
mean,
has
absolutely.
an empty parking lot in the back of an empty building for 5 years.
Right, yeah, I mean, there's no question that having the spruce trees there is an upgrade to what's there now. Moving away from that, like I said, I realize this is conceptual and you don't have things exact. Are you gonna pork chop that island in the driveway that's coming out onto Coolidge to make it harder to make a turn in there?
We intend to make there is, if you couldn't see it up close, it says no left turn. Yes, we do plan on putting a pork chop in there.
Okay.
We want to work with the road commission first before we start adding that.
Sure.
And getting their approval first. On that topic, we also plan to meet with the road commission to adjust the timing of the light on Harvard. We think that that's something that'll help also alleviate any kind of traffic.
All right, and I see there's some little, like, evergreen icons in the pork chop that I hope won't be evergreens, because that would actually interfere with sight
No,
distance.
no,
but,
those are low, those should be low bushes.
Okay. All right, just wanted to make sure of that. I have the same ephes thing. If it's a brick veneer ephes, I have a less concern about it. I really just don't like the panel ephes that you see on like every hotel that goes up near highways. I just think it's horrible. But a brick veneer is a little more digestible to me.
Excuse me. We need some direction here. Last time we brought you 100% brick. We took your advice and broke it up into two different materials. I have no problem coming back with these different colors. There's two different colors of ephes there, if you notice.
Sure, yeah.
Right? The tower elements here are a little bit darker, and then the center portions are a little lighter. The notion that we could come up with three different bricks is easy. But it's all brick again, and you told us not to.
That would look weird.
No,
Well,
not
you have
different
I actually don't have a problem with that.
wouldn't
have a
Multiple shades of brick.
I don't like it.
I think ephes is an accent, more of a decorative would be.
Yeah.
Make more manageable.
Right.
Marty, you have a comment?
On
Marty has
that
a
note-
comment.
Yes, sir.
Direction,
Well, first,
brick,
EIFS.
Let Joe finish.
Ms. Shandel, I'm sorry. I didn't
Yeah,
hear
I think
your remark.
ephes is an accent, or more as a decorative component, I think, is something that I'd be much more agreeable to. I too don't like the panel ephes, I just
Right.
don't think that that's a good look.
Okay.
But I think it does make sense to use it. I think it could be not to the extent that it's currently shown. I just think I'd like to see it more as an accent.
If I might just ask, do you have any objection from higher levels and that it is used at higher levels? And as we take it down, that we can help to refine it?
I mean, I think certainly from the second floor and above, you're going to do it
I
on
don't
the
like
first
it.
floor.
I don't like the idea of it cut horizontally personally. I like vertical. I like the vertical with the height because I actually think it minimizes the overall look of the height of the building.
Sure. Yeah.
Frankly, it makes it look wider
Wider.
as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, everybody knows horizontal stripes make you look wider.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
The
Look
wider,
with
I think
vertical.
I think it flows. I think it flows better. It breaks up the eye. But that I don't think you're going to get consensus. Some of the 8 of us or 9 of
We
us.
are not
this is where
in love.
7 of us.
You're not going to get a
everybody knows
consensus on that.
Okay.
Okay, so I need to get back control of this. So,
Sure.
okay, Ann, do you have any more comments before it goes to Marty?
Well, I actually had a couple others.
Okay, Joe, make them brief, please.
Yes. One, I just want you to, when you're thinking about lighting this, I want you to think about the color temperature of the light you're putting in the parking lot. I assume you're going to use LEDs. So I'd like to see something 3,500 K-ish, I think would be neighborhoodish. But if you've got security concerns, obviously I'd be willing to work with you on that. But and then the other thing is the townhouses. I still think they look real heavy, and I've always thought that. And I'm not sure anybody agrees with me, but to me they kind of look like they got lost on the way to Birmingham. And I'd like to see them lightened up. But if you're comfortable with the design that you're going for, I understand that. But just my personal opinion has always been that they're a little heavy for Berkeley.
In a curiosity standpoint, would you have a better feeling towards a brownstone type of setup?
Absolutely.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
Sure. Sure.
I mean, we were trying to carry on a texture. And again, that was our intent.
Right. I think it's just there's very large expanses of brick with very small windows in them, and it just kind of, I don't know, that stands out to me as there's more of a line between the units to distinguish which unit is which, I guess, is just kind of what I'm looking for.
I agree with you, Joe.
And that's
Okay.
I'm done.
Marty, can I get Ann finish her comment? Can we get back to you? All right. Okay, is this an EFS? Is
Well, I
this a
think I
siding
can
issue?
tie some of this together.
All right, go ahead, Ty.
You know, giving you direction, and the EIFS versus brick. On the east facade, your front building, as far as the coloration, how it's broken up, you did a fine job.
Yep, I think it looks good.
I like it a lot. Sure. And that's not even including the ins and outs. It looks nice. Now, when we left the meeting 2 weeks ago, I figured we have a brick building with EIFS infill. And we have, what I see here is an EIFS building with some brick infill.
Right.
Not quite. But I would suggest, and this is just, we're giving you direction. This is the left end giving you direction here. I see 3 colors here. The dark red is obviously, you're calling it out as a brick. And there's a medium and a light color. When I first opened this up and what I saw 2 weeks ago, I thought the medium color was also brick, and the light color was EIFS. Now, I didn't have a drawing to study, was it?
Yes.
Okay. I would like that.
Okay.
I'm asking you to give a little more brick.
The light color being the brick.
No, light is the
Medium.
EIFS. The dark and the medium
I'm
is
sorry,
brick.
I'm sorry. Yes. So Marty, take a look at these tower elements.
Brick.
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 Those are brick too? Brick?
Yeah, 2 colors brick.
Yep.
Those are brick and the lighter is EFS.
And the lighter receding would be the.
Sure. Now, you have to think about how you're going to detail your balconies with EIFS around it.
That's what I was gonna bring
No,
up.
that we, yeah, again,
I mean, your balcony's all over the place with EIFS. That's a detail.
yeah, that's,
Work it out.
Every location of the
The
balcony.
trim is a whatever, you work it out. That's right. Now, as I said, on the front, the east elevation, I think you did a fine job. Let's get a little more brick. Like I said, the 2 colors of brick and maybe a lighter color EIFS. When you turn to the north, and I assume the south is the same, what happened? It turned to blah. On the front, you have a couple cornices that project upwards. You break that line. And you have 3 colors, and you have some things. I know there's ins and outs, but you can deal with that on a little bit flatter of a surface. This, again, is very blah. I'd like to see some more east on the north and the south. I assume the south is the same. We don't have a south elevation here.
Marty, the medium colored brick in the middle of the east facade, would that
That could be. I don't tell him how to design. We're giving direction. But yeah,
throwing it
he's
out.
very right. Maybe there's the middle section, the middle 4 windows, or, the balconies and the next windows, maybe that's the medium colored brick. And then you have the light colored
Probably start
EIFS
with the
flanking
dark-
that, and the dark colored brick in the
Probably
corners.
yeah.
And you
So,
play,
so you want something more symmetrical?
not necessarily symmetrical, but
No.
give the sides more front.
Actually, I would be a little, actually, I think it would be more, in my opinion, on the north-south, it will be less symmetrical.
Right.
Well, it's very symmetrical right now.
Okay,
Right.
Marty,
In the front,
and
in
what-
the east elevation's symmetrical too, but
Yeah, but it's
That's
broken
okay.
up.
it's broken up.
You need something
Lose-
else
yeah.
on the east and the west, height breaks on the cornice. I mean, like I said, the composition
Dig
of the
deep,
east
Joe.
is very
Dig
nice.
deep.
Okay, okay.
You got
I know
it?
you don't get too heavily into the design part, but if we were to, in the middle, the darker, more chocolate brown, and flank out from, the lighter colors, and then ending with the, at the end caps being the chocolate again.
I'd like to see all 3 colors on the side,
Oh,
much
no.
like you have on the front.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
next, move on.
So, are you done with the siding colors and giving guidance now?
Well, that's the direction for that. I have a couple other.
I understand, but we let you go because you were tying things together.
Okay.
And Ms. Shadle still has comments
Oh, I
that she
thought
would
she
like
was
to make.
done. I'm
No,
sorry.
that's okay. I want to make sure she gets back to her, and we'll keep the flow after that. So, let's gain back control. All right.
Just a couple comments. I too appreciate the comment that was made by a resident concerning the dumpster location. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work right there in the public park area that we're talking about.
It does allow for a truck to back into it And it's
And
the
I
least,
understand that
it's the
it's
least
enclosed.
intrusive. And keeping it closer to the building itself, that's the primary issue. If we were to move it way out there, it's
That's
just-
right.
But I'm also
We're gonna-
looking at how are residents going to access it?
Yeah, how do they get to
The
it?
residents are gonna have, there's gonna be, on each floor, there's gonna be
Oh.
an area that's gonna be
Chute.
picked up every
Okay.
day.
Fair enough.
Put into the
Okay.
dumpsters.
That
But,
should-
to have it across the parking lot, and especially with inclement weather, it's a little bit more practical to keep it close.
Sure.
Okay.
And I think also in that same then area there, I think certainly the bus stop, I think that's moving the bus stop there, which I think is a good idea, but certainly I'd like to see that be complementary to what you're doing, of
Oh,
course,
sure.
with that green space.
Yeah, no, that'll
Shouldn't
be,
just be a
when we get into
standard.
the details of the landscape design, that will incorporate further and further. We just wanted to give you a bit of an overview. And again, I think you're going to find that there's going to be a lot of different amenities that are going to be aimed at the public.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think maybe, as we go further, and you mentioned that earlier, as far as community assets that you feel that this provides that are rarely found elsewhere, I don't know if we want to take a couple minutes right now for you to elaborate exactly what those are, because I think some of them have changed, particularly for the residents of the building, based on the plans here. I think some things have changed from some of our original conversations. But I'd like at some point to see those enumerated exactly what you feel those
Yeah,
rare
you'll
assets
see a
are.
list of, as we get further down, you'll see a list of the amenities, the things that we're going to try to encourage for the residents to be a part of the entire community. I mean, there'll be bike sharing programs, things of that nature to really, encourage the walkability, the bikeability, but getting people out there.
Right. I'm going to go to Marty, and then I'll work my way back. All right.
I'm using my scale right now.
I need to borrow Ms. Kapelansky's.
This works.
She has a lovely one.
Old school.
I'm just going to go through some random notes. We're, like I said 2 weeks ago, there's some brainstorming here, and I just want to throw things out. I don't need answers, just want to throw some things out. Is this gated parking, secure parking? If you don't know, you don't know, that's fine.
We're contemplating how we're going to do that. It'll most likely, and we're not there yet, but we will most likely have assigned parking. We will most likely have some sort of a gate at minimum to enter from the back, from the back, or probably either of the doors, ensuring security for the residents.
Now also, go to that last drawing, which is your perspective. Well, I figured you flicked through them real fast and always stopped there, that's why. One of the residents mentioned about possibly screening that. I know the lighting can be controlled, but I see right through that building. And I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago, maybe at those openings, some kind of a screening to downplay it. Instead of, and maybe, again, this is brainstorm, instead of big arches, which are fine, they look like heavy rusticated masonry, maybe some windows in there, so it looks like it's something different other than a parking lot.
Marty, you're
There's a lot of
absolutely, we aren't finished with that.
I understand.
We're right? No, but you're on the track that we're aiming at, and we do plan more screening, we do plan more landscape as well. Again, I think you know the answer, that we must keep all four sides open for air circulation. Well,
There's a
that's-
formula, but yeah, you're right. You have to keep some.
So with that in mind, yes, we will screen it more, but we do feel that it's kind of makes the building look a little lighter because of its transparency, some transparency.
I don't argue with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we talked about the brick. Talked about I assume, you obviously will have west elevations, and they won't be EIFS elevations either, right?
No.
Of course. I'm not going to comment on your unit plans, but I know those are early and
Don't have places for water heaters yet.
HVAC units.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I keep hearing a noise. It's driving me crazy.
Oh, is that me?
He's taking
No, I think
notes.
it's the podium moving. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, he's taking
Mice in the
notes.
walls.
And I believe 2 weeks ago on the on these condo buildings, I think.
Townhouses.
Townhouses. Mr. Murad brought up a couple points. I see you put in the garden, or the patio, which was a great idea. But I think we left that meeting thinking they were gonna be a townhouse type thing, rather than this. And I know I've said it before, I don't know if other people in the planning commission said it. This is right out of the 80s, man.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty blah. Done.
Okay.
That's my biggest. We're brainstorming here. And I've not given up on the podium thing, so please consider that. I sure you have. On the back, the raised garden instead of the common area. Maybe this makes more sense. I don't know what your marketing research talks about covered parking spaces. Right now, you're about 1/3, which may be enough. I don't know if you need more, but if you did do that, raise that up like you had the previous building. You'll get more. You'll get about 15 more.
Okay.
But anyway, are you looking at any carports? We didn't talk about that the first time.
No, we haven't gone there yet. There's obviously an additional cost to it. Typically, there's an additional rent to it as well.
Absolutely.
So we haven't yet gotten to that point. We may and also may not do it. And we may end up doing it in the future if we find there's demand, and we'll be back to you at that point.
Make them solar panels for when everybody's got electric
Oh, that was
cars.
exactly, no, we seriously had, when we talked about it, we talked about solar on the roofs of these.
Sure.
And be very careful where you put your underground piping for your storm. We worked on a site that was previous developed, and we had to build carports on top of storm, the big pipes.
Yeah.
Mm.
That was not easy.
Well, those
so.
are considered permanent structures, I think.
Yeah, but you still have to drop posts down there. Yeah, just be careful, just
Yes.
just take that into account. It comes up. Another thing I never thought of before until I was looking at this, we got this drive, the little beginning boulevard here out to Coolidge, and the curvy drive coming back into the building, or back into the site. Now, I drive up and down Coolidge a lot, and there's always that unfortunate event of a funeral procession. And this is where the church stacks them up. Is there going to be an issue there a couple times a week or a month or whatever with a funeral procession?
Well, we'll let them answer it, I think, directly.
Well, that is, I don't even need an answer now. I'd like an answer eventually, but.
The intention here is what is being added.
Okay.
Okay, is so that for events of, I'll call it an event of that nature, that it is.
Okay.
That's access right here, not here.
When one of our, some of our more popular planning commissioners have their funeral, there's going to be a big long line. So I just want to make sure that's taken into account with the church. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Won't be me.
Not at that church.
Well, it used to be. I like the idea of the townhomes there. I know they were put there originally as a buffer. We really don't need that buffer anymore because we're pushed forward. But I don't mind them there. I'm just throwing out random ideas here. It is 8 units, but they're there. We can work on them, make them look like they belong in this. Upgrade the facades a little bit. That's fine, but they're really not needed for what they originally put in there for. I think that's about as much as I want to belabor this tonight.
Started thinking
No, okay.
So,
All right.
Okay, next.
Mark looks willing.
How brief do you want me to be?
Very.
I don't have much to say about the design, the facade issues that have been brought up. I think you've gotten some good ideas from people that are more experienced and expert than I am. I like the basic design and location of the townhomes. I think they can be dressed up, as Commissioner Smith suggested, but the idea that you were extending existing community theme, if I could put it that way. I don't have a problem with that. If you want to bring a brownstone design in here, we'll take a look at it. Personally, I don't have a problem with the direction you're going in. As far as, my main comment has to do with the public space issues. I appreciate the public space that you're proposing. I think it's kind of like an isolated little island. I'm not sure how utilized it's going to be by people other than that reside in the development there. Anybody else from the community has to either cross Coolidge or kind of traverse a lot of other property just to get to it. So I haven't given up on the idea of providing more public egress. And I'd like to just have you think about connecting that small park on the west or the north with a sidewalk so that people that live to the west might have a better opportunity to use that park. Something else I just thought of now. Do we need that circular drive anymore? Yeah, do we need that, no, not that one, the one down by the church. Is that even necessary to have that any longer?
How are they going to get out?
How what?
So they're only going to come out on Harvard then?
Right.
Yeah.
Because they can't go out on Oxford.
Yeah.
They can only go out on
Well,
Harvard then.
I'm just throwing that out as something
And you'd
to
have to
think
cross
about.
through the church parking lot to get out.
How much is it going to be used anyway? I think it's going to be,
Primary.
not so sure.
Lot to
primary.
head south on Coolidge, there'll be a lot, used a lot.
That circular drive there, you think? Well, I have my doubts about that, but
Well, again, if I might suggest, again, going back to what we believe is going to be our tenant mix,
Yeah.
there'll be a good portion coming from Beaumont Hospital, making a right-hand turn into this as opposed to onto potentially Oxford and then making a left-hand turn into the apartment building. It's a little more cumbersome.
that's
but-
why I'm raising this. It's just sort of a backwater.
Well, it's also something, quite frankly, that, we've always, within our agreement, our restrictive easement agreement with the Archdiocese and the church, it allows that to stay open. We cannot do anything unilaterally.
Okay.
Yeah. So-
They're moving their whole operation down to Harvard.
Yeah, no, and if I might go back a little bit, first off, at our last session, you did bring up, and it was definitely taken into account, some kind of, and you asked, could we put some kind of a path through here? It becomes a bit of a security issue to encourage it. It's not to say still, Joe, if you might run along the western line, yes. There's nothing that prevents people from walking through here at this point. We don't necessarily want to encourage it. Again, it becomes a security issue. Residents, and I have to say, especially female residents, if they're coming later in the evening, they see unfamiliar faces. It could be a little bit more threatening, but and it may be nothing to it, but it still becomes a security issue that we just don't think it's proper to encourage it.
Well, you and I had talked about it more or less privately. I wanted to get that out
Yeah,
in this meeting.
Yeah, and I want to tell you, it was definitely contemplated.
Okay.
But we have a sidewalk on the front, certainly along Coolidge Road, and we don't, that kind of serves the same purpose. It's not to diminish what you're saying. If we had a lot more property, there'd be a lot more things we could do.
Well, let me move on.
It wasn't
Keep
ignored.
that thought
It
in
wasn't
the back of
ignored.
your mind. With respect to the streetscape and the underground parking that fronts on the street, I agree that additional screening at the minimum is needed. I think aesthetically, a great improvement could be made if the corners, the two corners of the building that front on Coolidge were made into some sort of space, some sort of business or other kind of space. And that, so it's solid on the corners. I think it would improve the look of the facility.
Over time, that may happen.
No,
Well-
that's not necessarily true. In essence, we have looked at this
Okay.
thoroughly, and it becomes a parking issue, because if we put commercial up there, we need to have some parking for it, and that then subsequently pushes the building back.
If we put a restaurant on those corners or something, Mark, they're gonna need, what, 8, 10, 12 parking spaces if it's a coffee shop or something like that? 20, sorry. And where are those going to come from? And there is,
Might be a
there is
small
so,
office.
okay,
Yeah.
but there's an existing business district just within steps of this place that are begging for more customers. We have the Coolidge Business District is begging for customers, and this is 136 units of new customers for that business district and easily up on 12 Mile. To give more competition to these guys where we don't have additional parking to give for the units that are up there. We don't have additional space, we don't have additional egress and ingress, and we have a kind of challenging parking situation along Coolidge now. I think, personally, I'm very bothered by the fact that this would be commercial on the first floor. I think you are robbing from everything down Coolidge.
Not the whole front, just the
Where
corners.
does it stop, though? And what is that? And what parking requirements? And then just to say, oh, it can only be an office?
But the difficulty I see with doing that is, let's say it's a little coffee shop on one end and some place, little cafe, diner type of place. Where are you going to park that it's convenient to get in and out of? People are not going to go to those businesses if they have to park way in the back of this lot and walk the whole way on a rainy day like the last 2 days we've had. They're just not going to do it.
Well, that raises my last point, which is the podium idea. That would create additional parking underneath the...
Still not going to be
building.
enough.
And I need some help. I'm getting plenty of unsolicited help right now, but my idea that I expressed previously about the podium was that I didn't like it because I thought that the ground level common area, green common area, actually lent some aesthetic value to the property as seen from the neighborhood. That may not be true. A podium would be more concrete, more structure in there, and it would look more busy and more crowded, I think. But I'm not really sure if I'm right about that, and if you did do a podium, you'd have extra parking for whatever reason.
Living on that podium, just for 5 seconds, and everybody else is recreating outside your bedroom window, because that's your window on the podium, because you need the light in there.
25 units.
5 seconds is all it takes. Answer. It's on the ground. Next to the cars.
You'd have 25 units living on that space in the back.
To me, one of the great assets of doing the little park area on the ground is the caliber of trees you can put in there. You have much, much higher caliber of trees that you can put in. If you're putting it up on the podium, you can only do little things in, planters. You could put whatever kind of tree you want in there, basically. It's going to green up the site more, for sure.
I basically favor a ground level. I'm just kind of trying to test my own argument out here, and
That's okay. And some of that came out in the work planning session.
just to
so-
finish off, I do think that the corners of the building need to be firmed up or look more firmed up. I don't care much for the see-through look
And they,
you know,
they
from
mentioned that
every
there's more
angle.
screening, yeah.
Yeah.
We already suggested we
It's already
are
been
going to
discussed.
screen further, we'll look for some materials. At the same time, please understand that it must ventilate air, period. That's a fire requirement, a fire requirement. Nonetheless,
I
between
understand.
landscaping and some screening, you'll see a change of the texture the next time around.
Fair enough.
Okay. Marty, we're going to go back to you. Everybody else hasn't had a chance yet.
Well,
I've got
I just
stuff to
want
say.
to, I just want to discuss the retail again. Back in our last master plan, we talked about this. We struggled on 12 Mile to break the retail. We do not want 2 linear miles of retail. We don't want that strip. So, you know, the big thing, what we did, how many, 15 years ago now, was say the DPW yard gets developed into a multifamily of some sort. That was one of our catalytic things.
Yeah.
This serves that same thing, that same thought on Coolidge, which we basically ignored 15 years ago. I don't want to see that strip continue forever. That is killing our town. It just, I don't want it.
Well, understand, I'm not talking about a strip.
I understand, but I want a big break in the commercial. That's me. But
And really, it
we
already
really
exists there.
struggled a long time trying to deal with, we still do. And I don't see our DDA director here, but is she there?
She's right there.
Okay, she's hiding.
She's hiding.
But we need to stop and break up our 2 linear miles of stuff. It's not all downtown. It's not all warehouse. It's not all little strip centers. We got to break it up into different things. You just can't keep going. And this I see as an opportunity to end that to some point and then pick it up again to the south, which it does, you know, south of the church. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah.
I don't
And-
want to
and-
see, and all the parking, and that's a huge mess, or a monster to deal with. And we want these people to walk 3, 4 blocks, 2 blocks to the other retail we already have.
I want that retail to be vibrant, and this brings in more people to make that retail vibrant,
Exactly.
because they don't need parking spaces, because they can walk.
So I probably won't say anything else.
Okay.
All right.
Mr.
Can I go?
Murad, yes.
Okay, so for talking about those corners, what I'd like to see is vegetation. Maybe a trellis goes in those corners. Sure. And you have a vine that grows up and covers that. Air still gets through, it's a screen, exactly. Vertical, you know, horizontal, vertical. Yeah, yeah, I think, and I've seen it done on lots of parking garages, okay. Other things, so, to the west, go to the site plan, Joe. So, to the west where you're putting that breakthrough gate. I understood it before as to why they have it there. I don't know why we need it anymore. I don't know if anybody else feels. Because,
People off Oxford.
because if somebody, let's say somebody comes in off of Oxford from the drive to the west of the condos, they gotta drive all the way around to get into that parking lot.
Hopefully they won't, and they'll start using the normal route of traffic.
They'll learn it once, more than
Okay.
likely,
Yeah.
but.
I'm thinking more for visitors.
Well, the purpose of it, first of all, the visitors will primarily be coming from Coolidge, we anticipate.
You're true,
But
that's true,
secondly,
okay.
Again, intentionally, we wanted to dissuade traffic coming further into Oxford Road. That was the purpose of it.
Yep.
So with the crash gate, that only allows for, or, you know, says it's okay for the condo owners.
Okay, all right.
That was the reason for it.
The garden area, I thought maybe putting it up a level, but looking at it now more, I think this is gonna, you know, because not all residents are gonna be able to park underneath this building. So there are gonna be people in that lot behind it. So if this was raised, now you're walking through a parking garage to get in. I mean, yeah, there's a little bit, but you also have these stairwells that some people will use that don't want to use an elevator. So I like that on the grade level. And Joe's comment about the caliper of trees, I never thought about that. As for the garden area to the south of the building, for the community, I can see wedding parties going out there to have photographs. It's a great location,
to.
right next to the church.
Yeah.
One of my thoughts, too, sitting here tonight was, instead of the drive curving down, taking it straight through, and then that garden area becomes an extension of the church lot.
That's charming, though.
So just an idea.
No, just kind of run me,
So you're, a throughway. Just a thought. That then becomes the whole garden area. It's just a thought. It's, consider it.
it's something we would have to talk and
Consider it.
literally renegotiate with the church. We have to find out.
Yeah.
It's true. That's not a horrible thought.
No,
No, it's not.
right. My fear with it is because it's a straight run that people might
No, there's definitely
drive
some
through it a
merit
little
to
bit
think about
quick.
that.
And then you gotta rework where you're gonna put your dumpsters, but that's,
There's some merit to
and
it.
again, you know, my feelings about the EFS, I kind of like what Commissioner Smith suggested, and again, the townhomes. I want to see something different there. I think they're like, I'd like to see it more that it doesn't look like this one big building. You know, because I know previously, in the previous design, it was 2 buildings of 4. Now it's 1 building of 8, and it just looks like this big building.
By the same token, somebody, and I'm sorry, I don't remember whom last time at the study session, said that they had just come back from Baltimore.
Me.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were the one then
I
who
was
said
the
you
one, yeah.
liked the row housing.
I like it. Yeah.
No, well,
You know,
then-
and going back to our master plan from 15 years ago, one of the catalytic projects was for downtown, and the areas that are like off of Rabina that are behind the commercial.
Mhm.
You probably remember this, Joe. The old idea was to turn those areas into parks, and my vision of that was then they're ringed by townhomes that could have been like row houses, looking over that community square, basically.
The only problem I have
So-
is the urban nature of.
I understand that, but I think,
We're taking 6 steps up, but now we're stepping up 5 stories on Coolidge, maybe it's time to take that step.
Mhm.
We'll come back with.
Yeah,
an
come
idea.
up with something.
And I
Look-
simply asked for kind of a show of hands of how many would prefer like a brownstone design or something that is mixed and matched within here. Is it, just to get a little consensus here of what you're truly looking for
Yeah.
individually or as a group?
You know my feeling, so.
Ms. Chairman, call the roll.
Well, we can start around the room and give a yes
Okay.
or no.
All right. The thing I like about the ones that are the current design is porches, because I think that
Yeah.
is consistent with the neighborhood.
Which we can still do.
Yeah, exactly. What I just want is the facade to be more broken up, so you can see all the individual units, and I just think that that would demass the buildings, essentially. That's really what I'm looking for.
Ms. Shadle?
Yeah, I have no issues with going towards the brownstone design at all.
I don't either. That's my biggest headache up right now, and my biggest hang-up on this project is I don't like what I see here. So,
On the townhouses.
on the townhouses. I like the idea of the porch on the back end of it. and
Oh, sure, that's
That's
good.
cool.
Absolutely.
But the front
That was a
just
good idea, and
does
we wanted to
nothing.
incorporate it.
And I do agree that with Joe, porches are,
Mhm.
we need a
They're
porch.
essential.
Essential. How you do
Um,
it, I don't know.
But design-wise, you care
My feeling.
Okay.
if it's
I'm the one that
similar
brought it up.
in this.
Ms.
Okay.
Kaplan-Lansky?
Yeah, I'm fine with the brownstones.
Mr. Richardson?
I second what Commissioner Jerry said. I'm in his corner.
I agreed with Mr. Murad 2 weeks ago, so I guess I still do.
I come up with a good idea once in a while.
And I like brownstones. I don't care for them there because I think they don't fit into the neighborhood, frankly. I frankly like not exactly like, it's not my very favorite, but I frankly like, I think this fits in with the way that some of the newer housing stock that's coming into Berkeley. I think it flows with the neighborhood, and frankly, I believe that a brownstone's gonna look like it was just plopped there, and then you have a small bungalow next door to it, and that's
But you
my-
have to remember, that's a 4-unit building right
Yeah.
there.
I understand, and it's gonna be 8, I get it.
If
I
these
get it.
had more of a pitch to them,
We'll bring in options.
would they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But I tend to think that your chairwoman is the right perspective, because I share that with her. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
But We'll bring you some options, take a look.
Sure.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Okay, so, who still has comments? Mr. Barnett
I
still
haven't
has?
made any comments.
haven't made
Listen,
any
I've been very quiet
comments?
listening to everybody, and we've already just discussed the townhouses, so I won't go any further with that. I still have the problem with EFS. I just think there's a bit much to it. And I've used it over the years. I've used it in many locations, but I just think there's a bit much, and I'd like to see it toned down a little bit.
And Dave, when you're talking about toning it down, you're just saying using less of it.
Less of it.
This to
Okay.
brick.
And
this to brick.
and I'm just asking,
Yeah.
so if it's in higher stories, is that less of a problem for anybody here?
Well, then think if you start using it in higher stories, then you get this long horizontal line.
I
So
don't like the
think
line.
And I think you need to be careful. I like the verticality of the building right now. I just think there's a bit much of it.
Okay, so were you in agreement with Marty Smith and his suggestions of, how to break up the brick? Okay.
Yeah, I'm more in line with that.
Mhm.
Those are my big questions. I mean, there's some other issues, but we're going to have to get into designing further before I get into all that. I've got lighting issues, I've got all kinds of other things, but we need to get into the nitty-gritty of it later on.
Well, we'll have a
There's a lot
photometric
of
plan,
issues.
but in the photometric plans, there's something.
Yeah.
I mean, and Mr. Tindori did not, what he had suggested is just fine with us. Did you
Yeah,
have something
lighting
to-
is, it's going to be a critical issue, especially in the garage area and
Oh,
in the
absolutely.
parking lot.
No, absolutely, it'll be spotted down.
We're
It
going to
will
have to
not be
warm
washing
it up.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be warm
In
LEDs.
reality, our lighting is going to be very similar to what we proposed underneath the building the last time, where everybody was in agreement that we could throw it over. Go back to what we were doing before.
Oh, we're going to look at that lighting carefully. I don't know whether you're going to have lighting on the balconies or any of that kind of thing. I don't
Whatever
know.
we have, it's gonna be spot, and
I'm not sure what you're
haven't
doing
really,
on that.
actually, we
But we
haven't,
gotta
we
get
haven't
into that.
discussed it.
I
More
don't
than
wanna get into
likely, there'll be some, it'll be spot no matter what.
Getting late,
Okay.
so that's all I got.
Okay, so I get a few more comments, and then we will see where we're going to move from there. So frankly, I mean, there's picky little things, not worth getting into. Most of the comments, some of the comments have been made, but I like the idea from the business perspective for Berkeley, because from a business perspective, this has to work. It has to be financially viable, and it has to work with the people who are going to rent it, so that we don't end up with a broken white elephant sitting on this lot that is either half-built or doesn't get done or empty, whatever. There's all sorts of projects we can point to. There are projects throughout the Metro Detroit region that we can point to. In every carefully planned community item, either whether it was some progression of construction that didn't get done, the market crashes, whatever, but.
A prison.
Okay, or Telegraph north of Square Lake Road, whatever that was, okay.
Parking garages?
Well, whatever that was, but the point is that it has to.
And I advised
Okay,
against
so
it.
from a business perspective, this has to work for Berkeley, or all of these other comments are moot. And it has to make sense for the diocese to want to sell off their property, and it has to make sense for the community. So I think in my opinion, these items are met. Would everybody like to see exactly what they want? Yes. But we have to draw all those opinions together and find a project, and I do think this project works. I do still like the townhouses, because that would just be parking lot, if not, or an extension of an apartment building that goes in front of those neighbors, and at least then they get something that looks like a semblance of the neighborhood that they're in. Would it be perfect? Is it perfect? Well, gosh, no, because we're a tiny community bounded. So we've got to, and I think we've put a considerable amount of time and effort into assessing this, but we also need to make sure it moves along so that the developer doesn't get sick of us and go to another community and spend their money. So I'm just kind of putting it out there that it has to be right for us, but we also have to get to the point where it's right efficiently. So when I suggest, okay. So we don't want to start changing up too much, and we do have to get what we want out of this. but no one's going to come back to us if we, you know, we don't want to, it's a fine line we have to walk.
Yep. Always
Okay.
is.
So, that being said, I'm going to close this discussion session. I don't think I need a vote on that. And we'll move on to the agenda. So you kind of have everybody's newest opinions of the latest design. We look forward
So
to an
if I can-
application.
If I can just reestablish, so we have a,
Mr. Baumgarten has all the notes.
and we, so we have support for our pre-application that we
We have made
qualify.
that support. We will make that recommendation. It goes forward to the next step. So that was our vote on item number 2. So now you've had discussion.
Our goal is to put it on, revise the package and be at your next meeting in November.
Certainly. Brilliant.
Sure.
Yes, okay.
Plan that you'll all love and we're getting unanimous vote.
No issue.
Since we are
It's
talking
a
process.
Thanksgiving miracle.
Madam Chair, since we are talking process, it
Sure.
would be appropriate to hold the public hearing.
Yes.
Just
So
want to note that from a process standpoint.
Yeah.
Do you want to do that soon?
I don't know that we would have it in enough time to have enough input on the public hearing. I mean, do we have to have a public hearing during our normal session? In the holidays, can we do it could we do it in a two weeks after Thanksgiving? Could we do it that week
We
to
could
have
do
a
it.
public
I
hearing?
think we'd be better off scheduling the public hearing for the meeting in December because we meet early in December. We meet the
Yeah.
second Tuesday
Yeah.
of December. I
December
think would be
If you
better.
would
Right.
like to move it up, we're totally open to it. And
Well, there has to be
if
enough
it-
time for you to get it done. It
Understood.
has to get us, because we also need DPW and public safety. We need all of that input in advance of the public hearing.
We have our noticing requirements as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, you gotta know.
I can work with staff and follow up with the chair on an appropriate
Sure.
date.
Okay.
So we will try to optimize the time we have left of this calendar year with our schedule and get all that in.
Understood.
All right.
So we will check in with Matt. We'll
Yes.
provide you with an understanding of
Yeah.
Yes.
when we feel we'll be ready. Can I ask a simple question? Can we be a
Sure.
little less than 100% ready? And still reflecting the essence, and you can have some contingencies to your,
I would be as ready as you possibly can be, because all of these items are going to come up, and if there are
Understood.
too many items, we will not drive it forward. So it's that simple.
fair enough. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
All right. So, liaison reports.
Where do you want to start?
I'm going to start with this end of the table, and if you have a liaison report, I'm going to work way this way. Environmental,
No report from environmental this month. The committee did not meet.
okay? Chamber,
Chamber. So I did attend the meeting on the 11th. They're working on updating their bylaws. They are exploring a Berkley gift certificate program with like different businesses involved, and then you buy a gift certificate, you can take it to any one of those businesses. I think that's kind of for the holidays. And there's another new postcard coming out, so
okay,
about what they got going on.
very good. Parks and Rec?
DDA. was the-
DDA.
yeah.
Are you
Yeah, the big news from the DDA is that they are working on their design guidelines project, and that's been moving forward for a few months now. So just so you're aware that that's happening.
Okay. That's it. All right, so any other comments? Our room has emptied dramatically. That's a little sad on that now. This is not time for, the public comment portion was earlier this evening, and this is just staff and commissioner comments at this point. I'm sorry.
Okay, well,
Okay.
can I speak to someone at a later date, or are you available later in the week or something?
You can certainly speak to the city manager, and he can help you. Okay, good, thank you.
I have a comment.
But we have comments that we need to address, so.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Richardson?
I would like to thank the citizens. This has been a lengthy process. It's still not done. But the quality of citizen comments has, I think, steadily increased as we've proceeded. And many citizens have informed themselves as to the requirements of our ordinances and are just as informed about them as staff and commission. Some citizens are really gotten up to speed. And, you know, quite frankly, some of that made me a little nervous, but I got to thinking about it, and, you know, under our system of government, why shouldn't citizens be just as informed as they possibly can be about the laws and the procedures and what's going on? And I think a lot of the comments we've received have been quite helpful. So I want to thank the citizens. And this is not done yet, so I hope they continue to participate.
Anybody else with comments they'd like to make in closing?
Good night.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
I attended that DDA workshop, and I won't say too much about it. Unfortunately, it was a little short. I wish we had 5 or 6 hours to work on it instead of 45 minutes. But there's some things that came out of it, and I'm sure that I hope the DDA takes into account what the citizens said. We had a lot of stickers and things to put things on, but it was informative.
Well, I read the report, and there was an online survey, an opportunity for people who couldn't attend that to fill out, so. Any other comments people would like to make?
Forget to vote.
Vote.
Don't forget to vote, all
You
right.
need to vote in the next election.
I will entertain then a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All say.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. 10:10. Thank you.